Chapter 10:30. Within the Sea Heart Palace, Lan Xiaoni had cried enough. At this moment, a blue mermaid swam over slowly while wagging his tail. He wore an imperial robe and had blue hair and golden eyes. His handsome features exuded a natural sense of majesty, as if he were born to be the lord of the heavens. "Xiaoni, are you done crying? I'm going to send people to exact revenge on the Fox tribe and the 4-9 Immortal sect after this is over," the mermaid said expressionlessly. "There's no need, father. There's no need to waste manpower on something as arduous as this. I'll just cry and everything will be over, wah." Lan Xiaoni continued to cry. The blue mermaid stroked his chin and looked on silently as Lan Xiaoni cried. Lan Xiaoni sobbed and sobbed before wiping away her tears. She looked up to discover her father looking at her with a cold expression, and the atmosphere was a little strange. "Keep crying, I'll just watch from here." The blue mermaid continued to look at Lan Xiaoni with a cold expression. The mighty clan leader of the Spirit Fish clan, Lan Xingyang, stared at his daughter with an extremely focused expression. Everyone fell silent once again. "Lan Xiaoni, when you encounter something sad and can't help but cry and vent, but your parents look at you coldly from the side, not comforting or speaking. What kind of experience is this? You didn't even have the courage to cry anymore." This was how things were sometimes. When no one paid attention to you, you didn't feel anything when you cried. When there was someone to console you, you cried even harder. "I'm done crying." Lan Xiaoni wiped away the tears on her face. A gratified smile appeared on Lan Xingyang's face. "You've finally come around." Lan Xiaoni's chest constricted. "Come around my A**s." Lan Xingyang continued, "Seeing as you've come around, let's get down to business. It's time to enter the fallen god seabed tomb. Your brothers have already opened a passageway for you at the Hongmeng sacrificial altar." Lan Xiaoni looked up at Lan Xingyang with surprise on her face. "Chernhao's map has already been lost. How am I supposed to enter the tomb with half of the map?" "You don't need to worry about that." A faint smile appeared on Lan Xingyang's face. "The high priest of the Hongmeng sacrificial altar has already seen the future. You'll know how to enter once you get there." Lan Xiaoni fell silent at the mention of the high priestess, and she nodded lightly. The high priest of the Hongmeng divine altar was an existence that even her Tao integration stage father greatly respected. He was an extremely powerful astrologer, capable of divining celestial phenomena. "When do I go?" Lan Xiaoni asked. Lan Xingyang handed a white dagger to Lan Xiaoni. "Now, go over there and wait. This is a power that can determine the fate of the Spirit Fish clan. Please complete your mission and obtain that information from the fallen god seabed tomb." Lan Xingyang spoke in a solemn voice. Lan Xiaoni nodded. The ancient tomb at the bottom of the fallen god seabed was protected by an ancient forbidden formation and the laws of heaven and earth. Only deity transformation realm cultivators with a key could enter, and she was the best candidate. Lan Xiaoni's brows furrowed slightly as she spread open the star trajectory chart in her hand. But the other person, who could it be? In the northwest of the West Sea, Anlin entered the white mist. As soon as it entered the range of the mist, the black shadow disappeared. Anlin felt as if he had passed through a natural barrier and arrived in a brand new ocean. Within the mist, his vision was completely unobstructed, and he could see a vast expanse of ocean that stretched as far as the eye could see. "Could it be that I'm looking at a fake turtle head?" Anlin was a little incredulous. The jade bone immortal bug didn't understand. She had never been to the moving heavenly star island. As for Tina, she was a complete noob, and she was always curious about where she went. Thus, Anlin continued to fly on his brick and wander around aimlessly. When he came across an island, he would ask the leader of the island for directions. Unfortunately, even within the white mist, the moving heavenly star island was still extremely mysterious. On an extremely large island, powerful sea pterodactyls thrived here. These dragons were related to lizard dragons, but their wings were thinner, and their bodies were sleeker and more streamlined, thereby minimizing resistance when diving. The most powerful being on the island, Tian Hai, was being ground into the ground by Enlin as he wailed with anguish. "Ah, please spare me. Be gentle. Don't do this." The huge sea-winged dragon lay on the ground as its body wriggled in pain. Enlin rode atop the dragon's back, and a golden light shone from his fists. "Are you going to tell me or not? Tell me everything you know about the moving heavenly star island." Enlin spoke with a cold smile on his face as he held a mirror in his hand. "That's really all I know," Tian Hai sobbed. "It's lying," the vermilion bird mirror replied in a crisp voice. "Heh!" Enlin chuckled coldly as his fist continued to fall. Tian Hai was tormented within an inch of his life, and he was unable to withstand Enlin's ferocious attacks. "I'll tell you! I'll tell you!" Tian Hai really couldn't hold on any longer. If things continued like this, he was going to be hammered to death. His life was more important than his oath to the heavenly turtle tribe. At midnight, the direction in which the 9 brightest stars in the night sky are aligned is the direction in which the moving heavenly star island is located. Tian Hai replied. Enlin turned to look at the vermilion bird mirror, which remained silent. The lie detector didn't respond, so it looked like he was telling the truth. He nodded with a satisfied smile. "Brother Tian Hai, you should have told me earlier. If you had, you wouldn't have had to suffer like this." Tian Hai shook his head relentlessly. "I'm the underling, senior. You're the big brother." This dragon was very sensible, so Enlin didn't go all out. Instead, he waited for night to fall on the island. During his free time, Enlin swallowed the second-grade immortal pill, the Dark Phoenix Dead Spirit pill. Black winds instantly swept through the entire island, freezing everything in its path. The center of the island seemed to have transformed into an abyssal demonic mouth that was trying to engulf everything around it. All of the living beings trembled uncontrollably, and none of them dared to make a sound. A high-rank immortal pill with the Dark Phoenix bone marrow as its main ingredient was naturally quite powerful. Enlin's flame power increased significantly, and the holy flame vermilion bird in his sea of vital energy also devoured the pill like a whale. A few more black feathers appeared on its tail. After eating its fill, the vermilion bird let loose a crisp cry, as if it was giving feedback to Enlin. The projection of an all-engulfing dark phoenix suddenly appeared in Enlin's mind, imbued with a vast amount of information and intent realm. Enlin's body trembled, and his eyes darkened even further as he let loose an involuntary cry. Tina and the jade bone immortal bug were given a fright upon seeing this. Thankfully, this didn't last long, and Enlin soon came to his senses before panting heavily. "Are you all right, Giant Enlin?" "Master." The fairy and the butterfly fluttered around Enlin with concerned expressions. Enlin shook his head with undisguised joy on his face. "I'm fine." He looked up at the twinkling stars in the night sky with a faint smile on his face. "Let's go. We've already confirmed the direction we're heading to. Let's go to the moving heavenly star island." Chapter 1031. It was midnight, and the West Sea had fallen into complete darkness and silence. Only the rustling of the waves was still active. Moonlight and a sky full of stars appeared in the sky and on the surface of the ocean, as if they were two inverted mirrors that were intersecting with one another. Enlin raised his head to discover that among the countless stars, the 9 brightest stars seemed to be pointing in a certain direction. However, as the stars shifted, the direction they were pointing in was also changing slightly. "This really is a moving island." Enlin smiled. He leaped onto his brick and flew toward the direction the stars were pointing in without any hesitation. The ocean at night was not actually very peaceful. Dangers lurked in the depths of the ocean, and powerful sea monsters would occasionally turn their attention toward Enlin. However, none of them had the guts to attack Enlin. After traveling for over 5,000 kilometers, a sea of light appeared before his eyes. As the name suggested, the Sea of Light was a sea that glowed. This Sea of Light was extremely colorful and dreamy in the dark night, as if he had arrived in a different country. All of the fish that lived in this Sea of Light could glow, and they swam in schools, creating a series of dazzling, vibrant, and dazzling images. There were also many things that resembled fireflies that leaped out of the water and breathed in the air with elation. Each and every breath they took was accompanied by a flash of golden light. Wah! A vast and distant voice reverberated between heaven and earth, extremely penetrating. The sound was ethereal and clear, as if it could travel from the past to the future. Unlin immediately halted his flight atop his brick, and his nerves tensed as he unleashed his divine sense to its fullest extent. Tina and the Jade Bone Immortal Bug were also silently preparing their spell techniques, clearly preparing for battle. A being that could emit such a sound was definitely not to be underestimated. Wah! Another sound struck straight into the depths of his soul. A certain spot on the boundless sea of light suddenly became empty. All of the glowing sea creatures retreated, as if they were fearful of something, but also as if they were making way for it. A faint blue light appeared at the bottom of the ocean, and it grew brighter and brighter until it stained the inky black ocean a bright blue. The pure blue overshadowed all of the colors in the Sea of Light. A gargantuan head slowly emerged from the surface of the ocean, sweeping up massive waves. So big. Tina's mouth gaped open as her eyes widened. And Lin also took a deep breath. Is that a whale? Its gigantic body began to leap out of the sea, bringing with it hundreds of millions of tons of seawater. The pitch-black night sky. Above the Sea of Light, under the full moon. Its round body glowed with a blue light as it drew an arc in the air, dyeing the night sky blue. This scene seemed to last for eternity. Rumble! The whale once again fell from the sky into the ocean, creating a huge wave. The waves surged and roared. The blue light gradually disappeared into the bottom of the sea, returning to the darkness. Is it gone? The encyclopedic Jade Bone Immortal Bug remained silent for the first time in the face of this monster, as she was also completely dumbstruck. Little Sister Xiao Gu, what kind of creature is that? It's so big and so beautiful. Tina was still in shock, and she asked excitedly. The Jade Bone Immortal Bug shook her head. I don't know. There are no descriptions of such a gargantuan glowing creature in any of the books. How about we call it the blue whale? Unlin suggested with excitement in his eyes. So casual? Tina cocked her head to the side with displeasure. Isn't it better to make it easy to understand? Let's call it Dalan. Unlin clapped his hands together. This is a new species. We've discovered a new species. Tina, the Jade Bone Immortal Bug, I feel like no one will acknowledge a new species like this. The Jade Bone Immortal Bug grumbled. Giant and Lin, what else can we expect apart from naming creatures based on size and color? Tina splayed her hands open in exasperation. And Lin couldn't be bothered to respond to these two fools and turned his attention back to the stars in the sky. He followed the guidance of the stars in the sky and continued onward. The appearance of the blue whale was only an interlude. However, that scene had been deeply engraved into their hearts, and they would never be able to forget it. A certain phrase suddenly occurred to Enlin. Seeing a whale when the sea is blue. This phrase seemed to be quite appropriate in a situation like this. He couldn't see the whale's cultivation base, but he could sense that the passage of time had left an imprint on its body. This was most likely a whale that had lived in the West Sea for countless years. Before they knew it, they had passed through the Sea of Light. Their surroundings fell into darkness again with only the stars and the full moon in the sky to keep them company. Enlin continued onward, and a vast expanse of darkness finally appeared at the end of the horizon. Look, there's a group of islands up ahead. That's the moving heavenly star island. That's right. That's indeed our destination. I can see that the island is moving at an extremely slow speed as time passes by. Unlin narrowed his eyes as he expanded his divine sense to its maximum extent to survey his surroundings. As they drew closer and closer, the moving heavenly star island was gradually revealed to them. This was a large expanse of islands of various sizes, and the environments of each island were vastly different. Some islands were covered in lush green grass, some islands were covered in poisonous mist, some islands were covered in ice and frost, and some islands were filled with lava that flowed like rivers. The islands were as different as heaven and earth, but the only similarity was that all of them had heavenly turtle tribe living beings living happily and leisurely on them, no matter what environment they were in. These turtles were not picky about where they were. They lazily lay on the island. It was late at night, and some of them were sleeping. Some of them looked up at the sky and silently gazed at the stars, as if they were trying to glean something from them. This wasn't to say that they were unfathomable, most of them were just bored. The average lifespan of heavenly turtle tribe members was over 1,000 years. Even though they lived for a very long time, there were very few things that they could do. Every day was nothing more than basking in the sun during the day and gazing at the stars at night. This was the idle life of the heavenly turtle tribe members. They didn't like to fight, and they wasted their time every day. Occasionally they would research some strange things. For example, astrology, fortune-telling. Unlin flew over one island after another atop his brick and concealed his aura. The relationship between the human race and the heavenly turtle tribe wasn't actually very friendly. The heavenly turtle tribe and the eastern dragon tribe were at odds, and the eastern dragon tribe was on good terms with the celestial court. Hence, the human race and the heavenly turtle tribe viewed each other as enemies in the ancient Tai Chu realm. Of course, there was no vendetta between the two tribes. Unlin concealed his aura only to avoid unnecessary trouble. He didn't want to provoke some resentful turtles, which was an arduous and unrewarding task. The moving heavenly star islands could also be referred to as the moving heavenly star island. There were all types of islands scattered all over the place, and there was no end in sight. Unlin flew toward the central region of the islands atop his brick. Generally speaking, all the bad *SS turtles lived in the central region, so this should be the right choice. Not long after that, a gargantuan green island appeared in his field of vision. Not only were there beaches and forests on the island, but there were also tall mountains, waterfalls, and rivers. What was even more astonishing was that there was a golden rainbow stretching across the two ends of the island under the moonlight. At the center of the golden rainbow was an antiquated bluestone palace. "I've decided you're the one." Unlin looked at the palace and spoke. Chapter 1032. A white light flashed past Unlin's eyes, and he saw an extremely complex and massive spell formation. When it smiled, its thick lips curved into a crescent arc, and its dark face revealed a devilish smile. There were all types of strange objects within the palace, including all types of tools for divination, copper coins, peculiar oracle bones, and so on. At the very center of the palace was a huge turtle lying lazily on the ground. "Perhaps Senior Turtle has some kind of problem?" the Jade Bone Immortal Bug suggested. The owner of the palace was most likely quite powerful. "Huh? Aren't we going to wake Senior Turtle up?" Tina asked in a sweet voice. The turtle's snoring reverberated throughout the palace. The longer one lived, the more stars one could look at. If one could look at the stars for tens of thousands of years, they would at least be able to see something, right? Unless it was an idiot. This was like a pillow delivered to them by drowsiness. Unlin stared at the scenes unfolding before him with a confused expression. A determined expression appeared on his face as he led the way. If Unlin showed the star trajectory chart to the owner of the palace, he should be able to understand it. The two girls expressed their thoughts without fear at all. Right at this moment, the space around them suddenly tremored. A suffocating aura was awakening. Tina patted her own cheeks with a surprised expression on her face. "My God, Senior Turtle really did fall asleep." "Giant Unlin, there's a restriction spell formation around the palace," Tina suddenly said. He turned around and led Tina and the jade bone immortal bug out of the palace. The huge turtle's 4 limbs were already extended, and its mouth was wide open to reveal a row of sharp teeth as a terrifying power converged. He was just about to retreat and change target. After all, the higher the cultivation base of a turtle, the longer it would live. Then why did you let us in, Senior? Unlin looked at the turtle with a curious expression. The turtle nodded before suddenly extending its neck, and its huge head almost pressed itself against Unlin's face as an ethereal aura swept toward him like clouds and mist. This was the first time he had seen a turtle fall asleep at the drop of a hat. Unlin's face convulsed slightly. What's up with this weird tone? Who is destined to be with you? However, this mighty being had taken the initiative to offer to tell Unlin's fortune. This made Unlin feel a little uneasy. When it saw Unlin, it pursed its lips and revealed a very human-like smile. It said in a gentle and leisurely voice, "Welcome, friend from afar. Come, let's go meet it. Unlin. Let's go." The jade bone immortal bug spoke in a feeble voice. If it really wanted to do something to us, it could have just attacked us. There's no need for all this. Could it be that Senior Turtle is asleep? Tina speculated. Forgive me for being presumptuous, but our meeting here is actually a matter of fate, the tortoise slowly said. As if sensing Unlin's concerns, it smiled and said, "How about this? I'll help you calculate your past first. If I'm not accurate, I'll promise to do something for you. What do you think?" Something difficult to say? Unlin blinked before turning to look at the massive tortoise shell in the distance. Its snores were still as loud as ever. Unlin was a little dazed upon seeing this miraculous transformation. Unlin was dumbstruck upon seeing the hole in the shell. He then used his divine sense to investigate the tortoise's condition and discovered that the tortoise shell seemed to be able to isolate his divine sense. Divination? The tortoise suddenly closed its eyes, as if it was reminiscing something, and its head also slowly retracted into the shell. Unlin. The main spell formation only had a radius of over 1,000 feet, and it encompassed the entire palace. However, the sub-spell formations used the main spell formation as a foundation, and they continued to extend until they encompassed the entire island. Unlin's heart stirred slightly. The heavenly turtle tribe loved to read the stars, and they also loved to tell the fortunes of other living beings. This was a well-known fact, and it was very normal. The tortoise looked at Unlin. "All right, I won't tease you anymore. It is fate that we met here, so why don't I tell your fortune in person? What do you think, my friend?" Unlin's lips twitched. What was with the tortoise falling asleep at the slightest provocation? 10 minutes later. In the heavenly turtle tribe, one's cultivation base and astrology skills were directly proportional. Unlin's eyes lit up and he nodded. "All right, Senior." Unlin's eyes widened. "It was telling my fortune a second ago, and it's falling asleep the next second? What a joke. Besides, we're still in its home. Does it not care about us anymore?" The tortoise's eyes were blue, and countless tiny symbols suddenly appeared on its surface. They quickly rotated, separated, and combined, as if they were a calculator that could calculate all things in the world. Unlin was a little confused as he stood in place and waited. At this moment, an opening suddenly appeared in the restriction spell formation. An opening that allowed him to enter. The palace was extremely silent, and the tortoise shell still didn't react. Why did it suddenly retract? Unlin turned around and his pupils contracted drastically. The entire palace fell silent, and only the round tortoise shell remained. However, that thing was too dangerous, so he hadn't used it much lately. If Unlin chickened out, then he really wouldn't be a man anymore. Snore. Whoosh, no one responded. No tortoise responded. Tina and the jade bone immortal bug. The huge tortoise looked quite ferocious, but who would have thought that its voice would be so gentle? Snore. Whoosh, Unlin's expression remained unchanged. Instead, he looked at the tortoise with an intrigued expression. Unlin, Tina, and the jade bone immortal bug looked at one another. Didn't I let you in because you wanted to come in first? The tortoise chuckled. At the center of the golden rainbow, there was a bluestone palace high up in the sky. Boom. He actually had a very bad *SS divination technique known as the divine simulation technique, which was of a higher level than the one used by the tortoise. Not only that, but even its limbs had retracted back into its shell. Unlin chuckled coldly. Why do we have to wake it up? If it likes to sleep, then let it sleep. We'll just look for the next one. It's not like we have to look for it. Unlin took a deep breath. The owner of this palace is someone we can't afford to mess with. This kind of behavior made his scalp tingle, and he really didn't want to stay here. Senior? Unlin couldn't help but ask. Senior is inviting us in for some tea. Should we come in or not? Unlin asked. They passed through the opening in the spell formation and stepped through the gate of the Bluestone Palace. Was he inviting them in? Let's go. Unlin felt like he had been played, and he immediately made his way toward the gate. Greetings, Senior. Please forgive us for approaching your territory without your permission. Unlin extended a respectful salute. He was just wondering how he could get this tortoise-mighty figure to help him research the star trajectory map, and this was an opportunity for him to do so. No matter how he looked at it, it was very intimidating. Besides, this is our first time here, and Giant Unlin has no vendetta against it, so there's no need to be afraid, Tina chimed in. Chapter 1033. The turtle opened its cavernous mouth, from which a terrifying power erupted forth. Unlin, Tina, and the jade bone immortal bug all prepared for battle at the same time. The energy fluctuations emanating from the turtle's body were simply too terrifying. Ah! Yawn, a yawn that went from low to high, and then from high to low rang out. The huge turtle yawned and opened its bleary eyes. It was a little confused at the sight of Unlin and the others before a thought seemed to have occurred to it. Your. The tortoise stretched out the word yes, and couldn't say anything else. Unlin looked at the turtle expressionlessly. I'm here to get my fortune told. No, you're the one who insisted on telling my fortune. Have you forgotten? The turtle suddenly slapped its own head, as if a thought had occurred to it. Right. I remember now. That's right, I'm telling your fortune. Unlin's expression darkened. Did this turtle have dementia? Or was it a goldfish that could forget everything in just a few seconds? So, Senior, what did you tell me? Unlin mustered up his courage and asked. A thoughtful expression appeared on the turtle's face. After a moment of silence, it turned to Unlin again, and countless black symbols suddenly appeared in its eyes. Unlin was astonished. What the **CK? You're telling my fortune again in secret? As expected, did he really forget about it before? How terrifying! Unlin was struck by a sense of unreliability toward this turtle-mighty figure for the first time. Turtle was the epitome of stability, but the turtle before him clearly didn't fit that description. After telling his fortune, the turtle slowly closed its eyes before retracting its head back into its shell. Holy **CK. Seeing this familiar scene, Unlin immediately unleashed a mountain-quaking fist without any hesitation. Boom! Howl! The turtle's retracted head was smashed to the side by the fist, and it let loose a wail of anguish. It opened its eyes with shock on its face. Why did you hit me? You're trying to go back into your shell again. Who am I supposed to hit if not you? Unlin flared up with rage. The big turtle felt wronged. I just wanted to close my eyes and organize my thoughts. Is that so? Unlin was a little embarrassed. Then go ahead. The big turtle sighed. My train of thought has been messed up by you. What am I supposed to do? Unlin. For some reason, Unlin felt like he had been tricked again. Seeing Unlin's expression, the big turtle hurriedly explained, although my thoughts are a little chaotic, I can still tell you what I have foreseen. Let's start with your past. The big turtle's gaze became distant. Your past is very magnificent. When Enlin heard this, he nodded. His experiences in the past few years were indeed magnificent. The tortoise continued. Your progress in cultivation has been quite spectacular, Enlin nodded. Doing push-ups, being struck by lightning, eating rock golem secretions, challenging cultivators of a higher rank, eating beast cores, transcending a small lightning tribulation to summon a golden void lightning Kirin, the tortoise. Your love life has also been quite spectacular. Enlin, can't you use another word? Enlin spoke with difficulty. Isn't it spectacular? The tortoise retorted. Enlin's lips twitched. He had no retort. The tortoise, your money-making experience has also been quite spectacular. Enlin chuckled. Hee hee. The tortoise cocked its head to the side. Am I wrong? Enlin took a deep breath and clenched his fist. Do you know what I want to do now? The big turtle blinked and asked, What? Enlin chuckled coldly. F*CKU. Boom boom boom, he unleashed his mountain-quaking fist. The tortoise's head was ravaged by Enlin. What did I say wrong? Why are you hitting me? The huge turtle glowered at Enlin with an enraged expression. Enlin's fists glowed with golden light and he chuckled coldly. You didn't say anything wrong. I just want to let you know that my fights are spectacular too. The tortoise, all right. I won't use the word spectacular anymore, the tortoise said with difficulty. Enlin nodded with satisfaction upon hearing this. He extended his hand and made an inviting gesture. Please continue with your performance. The tortoise wagged its head. Your beast pet taming journey has also been quite turbulent. Enlin was astonished. Was this the tortoise's resolution? The magnificent waves had turned into raging waves? The veins on Enlin's forehead bulged, and he repressed the urge to beat the tortoise up before turning to leave. Hey, little friend, why are you leaving? The big turtle panicked upon seeing this, and it hurriedly urged him to stay. Enlin replied without even turning his head, I'll walk my own path, and you can have your fun. We'll mind our own business. My friend, I know you have something to ask of me. I'll agree to it, all right? The tortoise asked in a panicked voice. Enlin's footsteps faltered, and he looked at the tortoise with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Free fortune-telling, free errands for him. There was something fishy about this situation, no matter how he thought about it. As the saying went, those who were unaccountably solicitous were hiding evil intentions. Just what was this tortoise after? I know what you're worried about, Enlin. The tortoise suddenly smiled. I'm not doing this for you just because we're fated to meet. In reality, I've already predicted a long time ago that I would meet someone who could decide the fate of the heavenly turtle tribe. Hence, helping you is the same as helping my tribe. The big turtle shook its head as it explained in a slow voice, hence, I'll help you with that matter, and you'll help us when the heavenly turtle tribe is in danger. Wouldn't that be a win-win situation? Oh, so that's how it is. Enlin came to a sudden realization, and he nodded before joining his hands in a salute toward the old tortoise. My apologies for disturbing you. Farewell. He began to walk even faster as he spoke. Hey, my friend, why are you still leaving? Did I not explain myself clearly enough? The tortoise extended a claw and urged Enlin to stay. No, your explanation was very clear. It's just that, Enlin's lips twitched slightly. I only wanted you to help me look at a map, and you F*King want me to get involved with the fate of the heavenly turtle tribe? This is like saying that I only want to buy a mousepad, and you can give it to me, but I have to go save the world with you. Are you kidding me? The tortoise was a little dazed. What's a mousepad? Enlin's expression darkened. That's not the point. I can't mess with them, but I can at least hide from them. Farewell. Please wait, my friend. I understand what you're trying to say. The tortoise said, however, you have no choice but to cooperate with me this time. I am the high priest of the heavenly turtle tribe. Enlin's footsteps faltered. There were over 100 priests in the heavenly turtle tribe, but there was only one who could become the High Priest. And that was High Priest Gu Yu of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe. His status was extremely transcendent, and it could even be said that he was the spiritual leader of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe. Lin turned around with incredulity on his face. He didn't think that he would encounter a legendary figure in the Heavenly Turtle Tribe. That's right. I am High Priest Gu Yu. The tortoise looked at Lin with a serious expression. I have no choice but to cooperate with me. Otherwise, you will die. Chapter 1034. Lin's eyes widened. I'm going to die. If any other fortune teller were to tell Lin that he was going to die if he didn't hand over the money, Lin would definitely reward that fortune teller with a mountain-quaking fist without any hesitation. However, hearing this from High Priest Gu Yu of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe made him quite wary. That's right, you're going to die. You're going to be killed by the Spirit Fish Clan. Gu Yu nodded. Lin's brows furrowed slightly. Even though he had a vendetta against the Spirit Fish Clan, only a Dao integration stage super mighty figure would be able to kill him. Would the Spirit Fish Clan dare to do that? Gu Yu spoke in a slow voice. I can only deduce the scenario where you don't want to cooperate with me. Of course, if you cooperate with me, I can guarantee your survival. I know what you want me to help you with. That's the only thing that's connected to the fate of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe. There are actually quite a few living beings in the Heavenly Turtle Tribe who can understand your map. However, I'm the only one who can guarantee your survival and provide you with a massive opportunity. Gu Yu's voice was filled with extreme confidence as he looked at Lin with a calm expression. Lin stroked his chin. What should I do in order to trust you? I can swear an oath to the ocean, to the stars in the sky, and to all of my tribe members. Gu Yu looked at Lin before adding, Don't think too much about it. I only chose to cooperate with you for the sake of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe. Lin nodded. This was a plausible reason. He turned to Gu Yu with a polite expression. Please continue. A smile appeared on Gu Yu's face. You came to find me for a certain mysterious star map, right? I know where that place is. In reality, the map in your hand is not just a map. It's also a key. A key. Lin's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this. That's right, it's the key to the fallen god seabed tomb. Only with it will you have the right to enter the fallen god seabed tomb, and only beings below the return to void stage can enter. Originally, I could have taken the map from you by force and let the soul formation cultivators of my clan enter that tomb. However, after some divination, I discovered that only you can truly change the fate of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe, so I chose to help you, Gu Yu said. Lin's face twitched slightly. You're quite honest. A gentle smile appeared on Gu Yu's face. Honesty is my greatest weakness. The huge turtle continued. Oh right, a powerful being from the Spirit Fish Clan will also be entering this place. It will be your greatest opponent, so you have to be careful. Lin chuckled. A soul formation cultivator is telling me to be careful? You're insulting me. Gu Yu. Little friend, I think you're a little too full of yourself. I'm not bragging, but even if a return to void stage mighty figure can enter, I'll still be able to crush them. Lin was brimming with confidence. Gu Yu. You sure are arrogant. Lin didn't dwell on this topic for too long. You said powerful beings from the Spirit Fish Clan also entered this place, so the Spirit Fish Clan also has a key? There are 2 keys? Gu Yu nodded with a meaningful expression. That's right. The fallen god seabed tomb is the tomb of an ancient mighty figure. Are you interested in learning more about the forbidden love between the High Priest of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe and the High Priest of the Spirit Fish Clan? A love between a turtle and a mermaid? That's insane. Lin was slightly astonished. I'm not interested. Get straight to the point. Gu Yu's eyes widened. It was just about to talk about their legendary love, but Lin wasn't listening? The point. Gu Yu thought to himself for a moment before saying, Be careful when entering the tomb? Unlin, is there nothing you want to tell me? For example, what to look out for? What's in the tomb? Unlin flared up with rage. Prior to their deaths, the high priests of the two tribes buried their past glory as well as their insights into fate in the fallen god seabed tomb and left the keys to their descendants. When the time is right, their descendants will be able to open the tomb. Guyu looked up into the sky. I've been observing the stars day and night and sensing the changes in this world. I know that now is the best time to open the tomb. After entering the tomb, you don't have to do anything special. Just do your best to reap the most benefit. If there's a treasure, take it. If there's a cultivation method, take it. Don't hold back. Unlin was astonished. What a thoughtful request. In reality, he would have done this even without the big turtle's instructions. After that, if you encounter any text or images that you don't understand, I hope you can take pictures of them. They may contain some important information, and I hope you can pass them to our heavenly turtle tribe, Guyu said. Unlin nodded. No problem. Guyu spat out a rhombus-shaped black crystal. Wear this. It can save your life during a dire situation. This is also why I said that if you cooperate with me, I can save your life. What is this? Unlin asked as he carried the rhombus-shaped black crystal with him. I can't tell you. It won't work if I tell you. Guyu shook its head. Unlin, did all fortune-tellers like to pretend to be so profound? Was it because they couldn't show off their skills if they didn't pretend to be profound? Unlin heaved a forlorn sigh and didn't dwell on this topic any longer. Everything seemed to be connecting the dots. The Black Fox tribe and the Spirit Fish clan, Chun Nan and Lan Xiaoni's wedding, Chun Hao's map key, soul formation stage powerful beings. Thinking about it that way, they should have sent Chun Nan and Lan Xiaoni to enter the tomb, right? But now Unlin had cut them off. The Black Fox tribe couldn't do anything even if they were angry. Their big boss had already been killed by Unlin. However, the Spirit Fish clan would definitely be very angry as well. If they saw Unlin heading toward that place with the map key, a fierce battle would ensue. I'll take you there myself. As long as you're outside of the fallen god seabed tomb, no one will be able to harm you. Guyu promised. These words dispelled Unlin's concerns. Swear it, Unlin said. Guyu, I swear to the ocean, to the stars in the sky, and to my brethren. After making a series of vows, Guyu extended its head and abruptly tore open a spatial rift. I'll take you to the fallen god seabed tomb. Unlin was surprised. You know the way without looking at the map? He hadn't even pulled out the map yet, and the turtle was already offering to lead the way? Was it really that bad *SS? Hee hee, you think that place is a secret to a high priest like me? The only use for that thing is that it's the key to the tomb, Guyu chuckled. At the bottom of the West Sea, ocean currents surged violently here, and lightning clouds gathered. Terrifying bolts of lightning fell relentlessly from the sky, roaring and roaring as they struck the surface of the sea. A woman sat on a massive seashell, looking on at the surging sea and the sky. Her lower body was that of a blue fish, while her upper body was that of a human. Her features were exquisitely beautiful, and her skin was as pristine and fair as jade. Her chest was snowy and voluptuous, and it was wrapped in a blue ribbon. Her slender waist and flawless back were exposed, creating a very pleasing sight to behold. Her features and figure could satisfy anyone's fantasies of a mermaid. The mermaid cast her gaze into the distance with scorching battle intent burning in her blue eyes. High Priest, who do you think my opponent will be? The mermaid asked. It doesn't matter who it is. Lan Xiaoni, just don't forget your mission. A ball of indistinct liquid hovered beside the mermaid as it replied. It didn't reveal its true body. Perhaps it felt like it wasn't time yet. A confident smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face as she licked her soft, pink lips. That's right. No matter who it is, I'll make them experience true despair. Chapter 1035. She was so frightened that she couldn't help but scream, "Ah!" And this was a hack king. In any case, let's not waste any more time and go on our way. Don't let down the hard work of your father, brother, and brother. Don't disappoint the Spirit Fish clan. What the F***ck was this? This was insane. Could he at least wipe away the tears on his face before saying that? Immediately afterward, the space around him began to crack open. Under normal circumstances, she wouldn't even dare to say anything in the face of a legendary figure like this. And Lin placed his map on top of the shell while Lan Xiaoni's map was on the bottom. Gotcha, it was now seriously doubting its own divination. There was a problem with it. Lan Xiaoni swallowed as she looked at the man flying toward her, and her breathing became a lot softer and gentler. This was an instinctive reaction that even she didn't realize she was doing. Lan Xiaoni sat on the shell and patiently waited for her destined opponent. And Lin patted Gu Yu's head with a smile upon seeing Lan Xiaoni's mental breakdown. Senior Turtle, do you see that? The Spirit Fish clan powerful being you're talking about, my biggest opponent, has already been defeated. Victory belonged to the Spirit Fish clan. Lan Xiaoni faltered slightly upon hearing this before turning to Gu Yu with gratitude in her eyes. All of a sudden, a voice sounded from within the spatial passageway. Lan Xiaoni's body shuddered upon seeing An Lin's smile, and her face instantly paled. He turned to Lan Xiaoni with encouragement in his eyes as he yelled in his heart, "Hurry up and show some of the power you should have as An Lin's nemesis." "How could it be you, An Lin?" Lan Xiaoni drew a sharp intake of breath as her nerves became even more tense upon seeing the giant turtle's true appearance. This was the high priest of the heavenly turtle tribe, Gu Yu. Lan Xiaoni nodded obediently with an extremely strong will to live. With her aptitude and power, she could look down on all soul formation stage powerful beings, and even Chun Nan was no match for her. No matter who it was, they were all trash to her. That's right, she had thought that her opponent would be a bronze rank being, but it was a king. Yu Feiyu. The poor girl was stammering from fear. All she had to do was torture the living being who had entered the tomb with her. An Lin had heard this from Gu Yu once. Lan Xiaoni had a mental breakdown. Never would she have thought that her opponent would be this man. The big turtle was so frustrated. Couldn't the Spirit Fish clan powerful beings give it some face and show it some respect? But now, she had the high priest of the Spirit Fish clan Yu Feiyu by her side. She looked young and helpless, but she could still cry, "Oh my God, it's fate!" Yu Feiyu and Gu Yu were on the same level as Gu Yu. Furthermore, Lan Xiaoni's expression wasn't an act. Gu Yu was quite perplexed. It had clearly divined that An Lin's opponent was extremely threatening. Why was it that the current scene was like a newbie meeting a big shot? There was no comparison at all. A teammate who cheers on the enemy? You. I. Yu Feiyu spoke in an emotionless voice. "High Priest, is this the opponent you said I have a chance of beating?" Yu Feiyu spoke in a cold and emotionless voice. An Lin flew toward Lan Xiaoni. The huge turtle slowly crawled out from the tomb, and even though it wasn't releasing any aura, Lan Xiaoni's heart began to pound with anxiety. An Lin couldn't shake the feeling that Gu Yu was a fake high priest. The huge turtle had been telling her how bad *SS her opponent was, but in the end she was just a weakling. That's right, this wasn't going to be the deciding factor. Instead, it was going to be the fallen god's seabed tomb. After all, she was just a spoiled princess, so she didn't have the guts to fight a powerful being who could even thrash a return to void stage mighty figure. Lan Xiaoni, don't forget that you are a direct descendant of the Spirit Fish clan. You have been acknowledged by the ancestors to enter the tomb, but your opponent is a human. My divination can't be wrong. You have a very good chance of winning. Trust me, go. Yu Feiyu's voice was ethereal and emotionless. An Lin stared at Gu Yu with astonishment on his face. Gu Yu, Tears welled up in Lan Xiaoni's eyes, and she was clearly about to burst into tears. With this in mind, the smile on her face widened. She also felt that the person beside her was a fake high priestess. What do you mean by chances of winning? Tell me, how are you going to win? It had no choice. Her opponent was far too weak, and it couldn't bear to watch on. Guyu couldn't allow its illustrious reputation to be ruined by a Spirit Fish Clan junior. The huge turtle couldn't help but speak. Princess of the Spirit Fish Clan, don't forget that the two keys have to be together in order to open the fallen god seabed tomb. After the owners of the keys enter the fallen god seabed tomb, if one of them dies, the other will be attacked by the tomb's restrictions. Hence, your life won't be in danger. After what seemed like an eternity, Lan Xiaoni gritted her teeth and looked up at Enlin. She seemed to have mustered up all of her courage as she spoke in a trembling voice. Enlin, don't think I'm scared of you. Let's just wait and see. A crisp sound echoed in the air. Lan Xiaoni puffed out her chest with this in mind, and she felt a lot more confident. Guyu, Princess, you're the representative of the younger generation of the Spirit Fish Clan. Show some boldness. Besides, she still had that. Lan Xiaoni took a deep breath before pulling out a map from her storage ring. Come here, we're going to put our maps together to open the passageway to the tomb. Heaven and earth instantly fell silent after the maps were combined. Lan Xiaoni. Hee, who would have thought that the keys would fall into the hands of the heavenly turtle tribe again? A faint smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face as if she didn't care. Who in your heavenly turtle tribe can fight me? Oh my! She's not going to be my opponent, is she? She was a powerful being at the soul formation pinnacle stage with exceptional aptitude, top-rate cultivation methods, countless mystic techniques, and many trump cards bestowed upon her by her seniors. Who could fight against her? Lan Xiaoni unfurled the map and spoke in a feeble voice. She was willing to sacrifice her life to save someone for the love that she had once thought was the most beautiful thing in the world. However, under normal circumstances, she was still quite a coward. That was indeed the case. She had been too scared by Enlin and had almost forgotten about this. Was it a competition of breasts? Lan Xiaoni was very confident. Her opponent appeared, and he seemed to be very excited. Maps could be refined, and when the two maps were combined, the owner of the map would have the right to enter the tomb. For the first time, Lan Xiaoni was struck by the same feeling as Enlin. Hui Pei, I know Enlin is very scary, but there's no need to be this cowardly, is there? Lan Xiaoni turned toward the spatial gate, and her pupils gradually contracted as her mouth gaped open. A series of traumatizing scenes began to surface in her mind. The two maps overlapped, as if the reflection of the sky and the sea had been connected. Enlin's brows furrowed slightly. This, you put it on the bottom, and I'll put it on the top. All right, I'll be on the top, and you'll be on the bottom, Enlin replied in a cold voice. A massive spatial passageway appeared not far away from Lan Xiaoni. Guyu raised its head and stared into the distance with an unfathomable expression. Chapter 1036. The surging waves on the ocean instantly became sluggish. The dark clouds, lightning, and thunder in the sky also seemed to have been frozen in place. Everything became completely still. Only the two sides of the map began to unravel before a white pillar of light pierced through heaven and earth and into the center of the ocean. Boom! The pillar of light surged through the ocean for over 500 kilometers. A gargantuan vortex began to appear on the ocean. Let's go. Enlin bade farewell to Tina and the Jade Bone Immortal Bug before flying toward the center of the vortex. Lan Xiaoni gritted her teeth and silently followed behind Enlin. Even though the path ahead was filled with despair, she was the representative of the Spirit Fish Clan and had the future of the entire clan on her shoulders, so she still had to fight with all her might. The two of them entered the white pillar of light and continued onward toward the bottom of the ocean. As they went deeper, the turbulent currents created by the vortex gradually dissipated, leaving only silence and darkness. If it weren't for the pillar of light, they wouldn't even be able to see the sea creatures around them. Their surroundings fell silent, and the sound of flowing water also gradually disappeared. Lan Xiaoni pursed her lips as she looked at the man before her, and she surreptitiously swallowed as a timid expression appeared on her face. She was racking her brain for a way to escape Enlin's clutches after entering the tomb. After descending for what seemed like an eternity, they finally reached the bottom of the ocean. Enlin looked up into the distance, and he could just make out a tightly shut blue gate at the bottom of the ocean. Its surface was extremely smooth and clean. It hadn't been damaged in the slightest by the passage of time. That should be the entrance. Enlin nodded before making his way out of the pillar of light and toward the gate of the tomb. Lan Xiaoni trailed along behind him in silence. She prayed in her heart that this mighty figure would completely ignore her. However, Enlin suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Lan Xiaoni. Lan Xiaoni's body trembled slightly as she averted her gaze. "Dubitch, what is it?" "You go in first," Enlin instructed. Lan Xiaoni's eyes widened with rage, but she felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her head at the sight of Enlin's cold eyes, and her heart froze. "How could you do this?" The mermaid princess was extremely aggrieved, and tears welled up in her eyes. She knew that she had been used as cannon fodder by Enlin to scout ahead. She was the princess of the Spirit Fish clan and the beloved daughter of the clan leader, Lan Xingyang. When had she ever been bullied like this? She couldn't give in. Even if it meant risking the dignity of the Spirit Fish clan, she couldn't compromise like this. "Stop wasting time, hurry up and go," Enlin shouted. "Oh, all right." Lan Xiaoni bit down on her thin lips and walked in front of Enlin with her head lowered. "Endure for a moment and be tranquil, take a step back and you'll see the world." For the future of the Spirit Fish clan, she was willing to endure humiliation. Lan Xiaoni made her way over to the gate and pressed her hands against it in an attempt to push it open. To her surprise, the gate was like an indestructible wall, and she was unable to push it open no matter how hard she tried. Lan Xiaoni's brows furrowed slightly, and she was just about to try something else when the fish head and turtle head beside the gate sprang into action at the same time. They looked directly at Lan Xiaoni and opened their mouths as a burst of terrifying spatial power swept toward her. Lan Xiaoni screamed before instantly disappearing on the spot. Enlin was dumbstruck. Had she entered an ancient tomb? Speaking of which, if they could teleport into an ancient tomb, then what was the point of having a gate here? Just as he was hesitating about whether he should stand in front of the gate like Lan Xiaoni, the fish head and turtle head seemed to have sensed something, and they turned toward Enlin before opening their mouths. Holy F***ck. Enlin let loose a cry of surprise as he was struck by a rush of dizziness. The space around him began to warp violently. His eyes regained clarity, and he discovered that he had arrived in a strange world. The sky was murky, and there was a light enshrouding the entire earth. Countless ancient swords were stabbed into the ground as far as the eye could see. A sense of sharpness, desolation enshrouded the entire space around them. Infinite sword technique. Enlin's eyes lit up with excitement. He could sense that each and every ancient sword had its own history, as well as its own battles and blood. When countless ancient swords were gathered together, the accumulated sword intent could even pierce through the heavens. Boom, 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 powerful energy fluctuations erupted from nearby. Enlin looked up to discover that Lan Xiaoni was flying toward a certain direction while unleashing one extremely powerful spell technique after another. Countless ancient swords rose into the sky from the ground before attacking Lan Xiaoni. The powerful power of water clashed with the ancient swords, upon which an earth-shattering boom erupted. What is she fighting? Enlin faltered momentarily before turning toward the direction that Lan Xiaoni was flying toward, and his eyes gradually lit up. Lan Xiaoni's fishtail whipped through the air, and each and every one of her leaps sent ripples surging through the air. Her body sped through the air as if she were swimming through water. All of the ancient swords seemed to have been stimulated, and they slashed toward Lan Xiaoni with astonishing sword intent. Lan Xiaoni twisted her agile waist to evade the flying swords, and if she couldn't evade them, she would slap them aside with her hands, which were imbued with the extremely powerful power of water. I'm almost there. These flying swords are extremely powerful, but I can still just barely keep them at bay. Just a few more meters and that necklace will be mine. Lan Xiaoni turned toward a huge ancient sword with a scorching light in her eyes. There was a blue necklace tied to the hilt of the ancient sword. Boom! Right at this moment, an extremely fearsome burst of energy swept toward her from behind. Lan Xiaoni screamed as she hurriedly evaded. At this moment, the figure had already passed Lan Xiaoni and was leading the way. Countless flying swords trailed behind the figure. The man turned around before slapping a palm toward the flying swords with enough force to twist the space around him. Bam bam bam! All of the flying swords exploded. What kind of trash swords are these? None of them are worth fighting. The man harumphed coldly before making his way toward the huge ancient sword. He picked up the necklace and stowed it away into his storage ring. Lan Xiaoni. Unlin nodded with contentment, only to discover that Lan Xiaoni was looking at him. Why are you glaring at me? Unlin furrowed his brows. And, nothing? Lan Xiaoni shook her head in denial. Even her chest shook along with her as she forcibly repressed the grief and rage in her heart. He was robbing her so openly, and he didn't even feel the slightest hint of guilt after doing so. If this were the past, Lan Xiaoni would definitely slice a man like this into pieces. Don't glare at me for no reason. Otherwise, I'm going to think that I've done something infuriating, Unlin said in a meaningful and heartfelt voice. Lan Xiaoni was astonished. Don't you know what you've done? After putting away the necklace, the ancient swords around them fell silent again. Unlin looked around with a perplexed expression, but he couldn't find anything special. Only then did he turn to Lan Xiaoni with a sinister smile on his face. Chapter 1037. What are you doing? Lan Xiaoni wrapped her arms tightly around herself at the sight of the sinister smile on Unlin's face, and she backed away in a fearful manner. You discovered the treasure so quickly. Tell me the truth, do you know anything about the fallen god seabed tomb? Unlin interrogated in a stern voice. Lan Xiaoni immediately shook her head. No, I know nothing about this ancient tomb. I just happened to see that treasure, so I wanted to take it. Unlin looked at the mirror in his hand to find that the vermilion bird mirror hadn't said anything, which meant that Lan Xiaoni was telling the truth. This was actually quite normal. After all, this was the first time the tomb had been opened, so no one knew what was inside. They could only speculate based on the final words of the two deceased seniors. All right, then be careful and don't die. Unlin nodded before turning his gaze elsewhere. Lan Xiaoni's expression was frosty, and she didn't say anything. She knew that Unlin wasn't saying this out of concern for her. If she died, the restrictions in the tomb would view Unlin as an enemy and attack Unlin. Hence, Unlin was saying this purely for his own sake. Sigh. If only Chen Nan was here. He would definitely protect her. Lan Xiaoni was feeling a little disconsolate. She was starting to miss her fiancé who was so close to getting married. However, the image of Chen Nan fleeing without any hesitation flashed through her mind again. Wah! Heartless bastard! You're so handsome, but you're not reliable at all. Lan Xiaoni couldn't help but burst into tears again. She hadn't interacted much with Chen Nan, and there was a reason for her engagement, but her heart had already been captivated by Chen Nan's looks. Was someone who was obsessed with looks not worthy of love? Unlin turned toward the sobbing mermaid and spoke in a cold voice. Aside from the fact that I'm handsome, everything else you've said is slander. Lan Xiaoni wiped her tears away with a dazed expression. I wasn't talking about you. I'm not handsome? Unlin raised his voice as killing intent suddenly erupted. Handsome. You're very handsome. Lan Xiaoni's body stiffened upon hearing this. Woman, don't always cry in the future, it's annoying, Unlin said in an extremely overbearing manner. Lan Xiaoni lowered her head and interlaced her fingers together. Yes. Unlin nodded in satisfaction and took the lead. Follow me, I'll protect you. Yes. Lan Xiaoni nodded instinctively. But in next to no time, she recovered from her shock, and her pair of dark blue eyes stared blankly at the figure that was moving forward without end. She thought with slight disbelief, he said he would protect me? Unlin's original plan was to have Lan Xiaoni lead the way as cannon fodder. However, he was worried that Lan Xiaoni would be too weak and accidentally fall into the trap. In that case, he would become the enemy of the entire tomb, and that would be even worse. After careful consideration, he decided to let Lan Xiaoni tag along with him. Unlin continued onward atop his brick as he unleashed his divine sense in a frenzy, enveloping the entire area. There's nothing else here. Let's continue. After flying for a while, Unlin's brows furrowed slightly. The vastness of this place had far exceeded his imagination. He looked around to find that there were still countless ancient swords embedded into the ground. That's strange. He suddenly slowed down. Lan Xiaoni was caught off guard and almost crashed into Unlin's back, upon which her heart skipped a beat. What's wrong? The mermaid princess was a little nervous as she looked around with her dark blue eyes, thinking that they had fallen into some kind of trap. Where did the Spirit Fish clan and the Heavenly Turtle tribe get so many swords? Unlin was a little perplexed. Lan Xiaoni, I've been so nervous for so long, and this is what you're telling me? Unlin continued, even if these ancient swords are very brittle and don't look like they're worth much, it would still take an immeasurable amount of manpower and resources to create so many swords. What are these swords for? There's no need to do this at all. Is it just to create a grand spectacle? Lan Xiaoni faltered slightly upon hearing this. His words did make sense. This was a scene that she was used to, but there were a lot of loopholes in it. At first glance, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with creating a grand spectacle. However, they had been walking for so long, yet they still couldn't reach the end. This was a little too strange. It was like building a small garden in front of a mansion. That was very stylish and elegant. But building a forest in front of the mansion? That would be insane. Unlin suddenly thought of that blue necklace. He had only wanted to take the necklace with him so that he could take it back and play with it. However, now that he thought about it, Lan Xiaoni's attempt to take the necklace with him had triggered a reaction from the ancient swords. Perhaps the two were connected? Unlin pulled out the blue necklace from his storage ring. All of the surrounding ancient swords suddenly rose into the sky as if they were being drawn by something. Flying swords rained down upon Unlin with fearsome might. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted drastically, and she was just about to unleash a spell technique to defend herself when she suddenly heard a cold harumph. Boom! Purple divine flames erupted, enshrouding the two of them as the terrifying temperatures caused the air to warp and twist and the earth to melt. The flying swords crashed into the wall of flames, only to be vaporized into wisps of smoke by the scorching temperatures. None of them were able to penetrate the wall. Lan Xiaoni stopped and turned to look at Unlin, only to be greeted by the sight of his calm expression, as if he didn't even take these powerful flying swords seriously. For some reason, a thought suddenly popped up in her mind. From a certain perspective, Unlin was quite reliable. After unleashing the demonic star flame, Unlin focused his attention on the necklace. Divine Inspection Technique. Sword Burial Necklace. This was an offensive weapon forged with sword-intense stars as its core. It could absorb dead, flying swords into the necklace and store energy before releasing them. Dead swords had to have had masters in the past. After the master passed away, the swords lost their spiritual nature and were referred to as dead swords. Unlin was astonished. Never would he have thought that this necklace would be a weapon that utilized the power of dead swords. Dead swords were quite rare and were often seen on battlefields, where they were stained by the blood of men and death. However, it just so happened that all of the ancient swords here seemed to be dead swords, and Lin's heart throbbed with pain as he looked at the flying swords being melted by his divine flames. These were all treasures. He immediately cancelled the divine flames before refining the necklace and tossing it into the air. "Come on. I'll take as many as you have." He activated the spatial absorption ability of the necklace with all his might. A dark light erupted from the sword burial necklace before forming a blue hole. The entire earth instantly began to tremor. Countless ancient swords rose from the ground. Like a surging river, they swarmed toward the blue hole released by the necklace and disappeared. 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000, 100,000,000. That's right, all of the flying swords in this world had begun to move, and Lin's excitement was tinged with a hint of concern. Dead swords were so rare, but there were so many of them here. He felt like the mystery was only getting bigger. Tears welled up in Lan Xiaoni's eyes as she stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before her eyes. Even an idiot would know that this treasure that she had stumbled upon was super bad *SS. She had missed such a bad *SS treasure by a hair's breadth. Lan Xiaoni's heart throbbed with pain, but she couldn't do anything about it. And Lin couldn't be bothered with the emotions of a lowly soldier, and he continued to absorb the dead sword. The dead sword would be nurtured within the sword burial necklace, and it would be able to unleash even more power than before. It would also become more powerful as its master's power of the Tao of the sword deepened. It could be said that this was a treasure with a lot of room for growth. However, in terms of value, it crushed the vast majority of immortal tools. He had only just entered the tomb, and he had already stumbled upon such a fantastic treasure. And Lin couldn't help but look forward to what he was going to encounter next. Chapter 1038. The blue hole in the sword burial chain was still relentlessly absorbing the flying swords. A peculiar phenomenon began to unfold, and in Lin and Lan Xiaoni's expressions shifted drastically. "The ground around us is shrinking?" Lan Xiaoni's eyes widened, and she instinctively flew into the air as she instinctively distanced herself from the ground. "This is most likely a fake ground." And Lin's lips twitched. The ground continued to shrink with the blue hole at the center, as if the entire world was shrinking with it at the center. As for where the disappearing matter went, even Lin didn't know. The only consolation was that the death swords in the ground weren't fake. As the ground shrank, the entire space seemed to be shrinking as well. And Lin could see a murky gray boundary quickly crashing down toward him, as if it were a cage that was enshrouding a living being, and it continued to shrink until it exploded. After all of the death swords had been absorbed, Lin quickly stowed the sword burial chain away before unleashing his divine flames and holy flames toward the boundary. Lan Xiaoni's features paled, and she summoned a massive wave to crash toward the shrinking boundary. However, the massive wave was instantly evaporated into water vapor upon crashing into Lin's divine flames. Lin's divine flames were also slightly weakened as a result. Lan Xiaoni, if it weren't for the fact that you can't die, I would definitely toss you out of here right now, Lin said with a serious expression. Lan Xiaoni hung her head in shame as tears welled up in her eyes. Boom! The shrinking boundary clashed with the flames, instantly dispersing them. "It's this powerful?" Lin drew a sharp intake of breath. He was just about to unleash his origin energy of the netherworld in a last-ditch effort when the spatial boundary completely shrank before engulfing both his and Lan Xiaoni's bodies. Another burst of dazzling spatial teleportation ensued. Lin opened his eyes again to find that he had arrived in a sealed corridor. The corridor was quite wide and was constructed from green brick. Countless blue candlelight lit up the sides of the corridor, and there were statues of mermaids and heavenly turtle tribe members standing on either side of the corridor. The expressions of the statues were either smiling, laughing, fearful, or twisted. Some of their smiles were so wide that their mouths even reached their ears. In any case, they all looked very painful to the eyes. Sealed, quiet, strange, terrifying, a certain atmosphere was spreading. Lan Xiaoni's reaction became even more intense at the sight of the mermaid statues, and her breathing accelerated as she silently leaned against Enlin. Enlin said impatiently, "Stay away from me, your seafood smell is too strong." Lan Xiaoni almost threw up a mouthful of blood upon hearing this. "This is not the aroma of seafood, it's the aroma of your body. Do you understand? How can you use such a clumsy adjective as seafood when I have such an enchanting aroma?" The noble mermaid princess couldn't hold it in any longer. For the first time, she dissed Enlin. He could look down on her, but how could he insult her fragrance? Enlin didn't get angry. He just asked curiously, "But it smells delicious. Isn't it just the smell of seafood?" Lan Xiaoni's teeth chattered with rage. All of a sudden, she seemed to have noticed something, and she couldn't help but stumble back a few steps as she screamed, "Ah! Don't even think about that. I may be beautiful, but I don't taste good." Enlin stared at Lan Xiaoni with confusion on his face. Why did she say something like that? He didn't understand what was going on. Was there something wrong with this woman? He had yet to realize just how much damage he had dealt to this mermaid princess' heart by describing her as a seafood flavor. Lan Xiaoni felt like Enlin was trying to eat her by describing her as seafood. Enlin shook his head and continued down the corridor. He touched the statues to find that they were all made from copper and didn't look very special. This made him give up on the idea of taking all of the statues with him. He couldn't do that as it would leave a bad impression on the tomb's owner. It was better to take the best treasures with him. The two of them walked for a short while before arriving at the end of the corridor. Within a circular chamber, there were two tightly shut doors and a key. One of the doors had the words, "Tomb Treasure" written on it, while the other door had the words, "Tribe Secret" written on it. It was quite clear that she could only choose one of the two paths. A scorching light appeared in Lan Xiaoni's eyes as she looked at the door to the tribe secret. She had never forgotten her mission, which was to fight for the future of the Spirit Fish clan. It was quite clear that the door to the tribe secret contained information that would determine the future of the Spirit Fish clan. Lan Xiaoni made her way toward the key and held it tightly in her hand as she looked at the door with the words, "Tribe Secret" written on it, as if she were looking at a door of hope. She slowly made her way toward the door before a hand clamped down on her snowy white shoulder. "But where are you going? You're going in the wrong direction." A steady but dignified voice suddenly came from behind him. Lan Xiaoni's body shuddered, and she turned around with difficulty to look into the eyes of a man with an implacable expression. But we can find more treasures. The future of our tribe is more important," Lan Xiaoni argued. She had already expended a lot of courage to say this. Enlin chuckled lightly upon hearing this. "What does the future of your tribe have to do with me? I only want the treasures." Lan Xiaoni's eyes widened with incredulity. Didn't Gu Yu make an agreement with you? Didn't it ask you to bring back the secret of the Heavenly Turtle tribe?" Gu Yu had personally escorted Enlin here, so there was no way that Lan Xiaoni would believe that the two of them hadn't reached some sort of agreement. "There was an agreement. It told me to take all of the treasures in the tomb after I entered it. After that, if I encountered any information that I didn't understand, I would take a picture of it and bring it back with me." Enlin spoke with a nonchalant expression. Lan Xiaoni was astonished. What a blissful request! The stark contrast between the two of them almost brought tears to Lan Xiaoni's eyes. She had come here with the heavy responsibility of her tribe on her shoulders, but Enlin was here to make money. But how could she give up? Fighting for the future of her tribe was a form of honor, and she wasn't going to back down because of this. Enlin pointed at the ancient tomb treasure vault door and issued a stern command, "Hurry up and open the door with the key." "Yes." Lan Xiaoni nodded obediently before making her way over to the ancient tomb treasure vault door and opening it with the key. Enlin was too powerful. Fighting him head-on was not a rational course of action, so she had to endure this humiliation. The two of them entered the door and walked along a narrow corridor. Soon, they emerged from the corridor and arrived at an extremely spacious area. A statue of a spirit fish clan man over 10,000 feet tall stood at the very center. He had a handsome face with long, curly hair that fell all the way down to his waist, and he held an intricately crafted staff in his hand. After the two of them arrived at the spacious area, the two eyes of the statue suddenly turned to stare directly at Enlin and Lan Xiaoni. Enlin's heart constricted as he felt like he was being stared at by some kind of power. Lan Xiaoni couldn't help but let loose a cry of surprise. "He's the high priest of our tribe buried in the ancient tomb, Shihaizi." Chapter 1039. Shihaizi? Enlin chuckled upon hearing this. "I'm talking about Siemens." The huge spirit fish clan statue's eyeballs could move around, which was quite a harrowing sight to behold. However, Enlin was already used to its gaze, so he didn't pay it much heed. No matter how bad *SS it was still a statue. Was it going to jump out and beat him up? However, you said that Shihaizi is the high priest of your tribe. Could it be that a man fell in love with a huge turtle? Enlin came to his senses and was extremely astonished. He wasn't interested in listening to Gu Yu's love story, but thinking about it now, it was way too *king exciting. He had always thought that it was a male turtle who fell in love with a mermaid, but it turned out that it was a handsome fish who fell in love with a female turtle. This was as terrifying as Xian Yuan Qing falling in love with Qing Hua. Lan Xiaoni cocked her head to the side with a perplexed expression. This is a love that transcends species. Is there a problem? She discovered that she was unable to keep up with Enlin's train of thought. Was this the world of powerful beings? Was this how powerful beings thought? Enlin waved his hand in resignation. He couldn't even be bothered to complain. He was unable to accept this type of love, so he could only turn his gaze elsewhere to distract himself. However, he discovered that there was nothing around him. Could it be that the treasure was this statue? What the *CK? Fated ones, welcome to the tomb of me and Tianqinji. A voice suddenly erupted from the statue's mouth. This voice was as loud as rumbling thunder. Enlin turned to look at the statue, and his eyes met with the statue's round eyes. He stroked his chin with a contemplative expression. A statue that could talk should be quite valuable, right? Lan Xiaoni's hands clenched into tight fists. This ancient high priest could talk. You've chosen the treasure path, so you have to unleash the corresponding power. If you die on the treasure path, then it only means that you and I are not fated to be together. The stone statue began to move and slowly spread its arms. Rumble! 6 balls of light of different colors appeared before Enlin and Lan Xiaoni. The colors of the balls of light were black, white, blue, yellow, green, and red. Each ball of light can lead you to a different world, where you can obtain different supreme treasures. You can choose now, the statue of Shihaizi said with a smile. Lan Xiaoni pointed at the blue ball of light. I want to go to this world. Enlin pointed at the yellow orb. I want to go to this world. The two of them chose different worlds. Lan Xiaoni's heart was filled with excitement. She knew that her opportunity had come. If the two of them went to different worlds, she would be able to get rid of the fear of being dominated by Enlin. She would be free and fight for her own interest. The statue spoke again. 2 fated ones, please choose the same ball of light. Lan Xiaoni, shall we choose again then? Enlin looked at Lan Xiaoni with a smile. Lan Xiaoni forced a smile onto her face. All right. The second choice was the light orb. Enlin chose the yellow orb again. Lan Xiaoni also pointed toward the yellow ball of light. The two of them quickly reached a consensus. There was no discussion, no quarrel, and they had a tacit understanding of each other. All right, I'll teleport you to the yellow ball realm now. The statue of Shihaizi spoke with a gratified expression. He didn't forget to add, what a harmonious couple. Lan Xiaoni, Enlin, did this stupid statue misunderstand something? They had entered the tomb together, but they weren't a couple. Unlin was just about to let loose a torrent of abuse when the yellow ball of light quickly expanded and engulfed the two of them. Another terrifying rush of dizziness ensued. Unlin felt like he was about to throw up. Following on from his fear of heights and his dizziness of sword kinesis flight, he felt like he was about to suffer from another fear of teleportation. The space around them transformed. The two of them instantly appeared within a vast expanse of yellow sand. It was as if the sky had been scorched by flames as golden clouds surged and surged, accompanied by scorching heat waves. The terrifyingly high temperatures caused the air in the desert to warp and warp. If a normal living being were to appear here, they would probably be scorched to death within a few seconds. "It's so hot," Lan Xiaoni complained in a faint voice. She was dressed very skimpily. Her upper body was only wrapped in a blue satin cloth, revealing her towering snow-white breasts. Whether it was her waist, her smooth and round shoulders, or her snow-white, smooth and beautiful back, they were all exposed. This type of attire was extremely common among the mermaid tribe. However, even in such a skimpy outfit, she was still unable to withstand the scorching heat of the desert, and she unleashed a spell technique to maintain her body's coolness. Unlin glanced at Lan Xiaoni with a resigned expression. He was wondering why the Spirit Fish clan would entrust their hopes to such a spoiled princess. This didn't make any sense. Lan Xiaoni was weak, timid, and extremely afraid of death. She didn't even have the courage to resist him, so how was she going to become his enemy? Unlin was a little perplexed, and he silently walked at the forefront. Lan Xiaoni silently followed along behind him. Every world had a treasure, and the statue had said that obtaining the treasure required one's own power. If one were to die by accident, that would only prove that they weren't fated to enter the tomb. This meant that there was definitely a great danger in this desert. Unlin didn't dare to let his guard down, and he used his divine sense to survey his surroundings as he continued onward. The scorching desert appeared to be boundless and boundless, but he soon discovered through his powerful divine sense that the temperature was different depending on which direction he walked in. He began to walk in the direction where the temperature was getting higher and higher. Why is it getting hotter and hotter? The silly mermaid princess was a little perplexed, and she looked around nervously as she spoke with an uneasy expression. She was worried that she would be scalded to death. Unlin couldn't be bothered to respond to Lan Xiaoni, and he continued onward. The temperature was getting hotter and hotter, and the vital energy-imbued sand beneath his feet had already become a scorching golden-white color. It was even hotter than a red-hot metal plate. Lan Xiaoni's fishtail had already left the ground as she unleashed a water-type spell technique to dissipate the heat from her body. She didn't want her lower body to become a sizzling hot metal plate. She was afraid that if she did, Unlin wouldn't be able to control himself and would eat her. Eat was the literal meaning of the word. Lan Xiaoni had already imagined Unlin to be a demon king who liked to eat Spirit Fish clan cultivators. He had said that her body odor was seafood, and that was a blatant attempt at seduction and innuendo. Just as Lan Xiaoni was thinking about all sorts of random things, Unlin suddenly stopped in his tracks. "We're here," Unlin said. Lan Xiaoni turned to Unlin with a confused expression. All of a sudden, the scorching sand on the ground caved in like quicksand. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted, but she didn't get a chance to do anything. Boom! The sand suddenly exploded. A huge insect enshrouded in golden flames flew into the sky before opening its mouth, which was lined with sharp teeth, and it bit toward Lan Xiaoni at an extremely terrifying speed. The insect had made a choice between Unlin and Lan Xiaoni. It wanted to eat seafood. Chapter 1040. Only black, white, blue, green, and red remained within the ball of light. Lan Xiaoni clasped a hand over her voluptuous chest as her heart throbbed with pain at the sight of Unlin's elated expression. Boom! Blue energy erupted into the sky. And it had killed a sandworm. This was the spell technique derived from the first stage of Enlin's God cultivation method, extreme frost vortex. With each and every breath it took, white spikes would expand and contract on its body, bringing with them bursts of heat waves. Enlin silently pulled out the shimmering golden ball and activated his divine inspection technique. However, Enlin didn't even look at the sandworms. Instead, he abruptly stomped a foot into the sand. Her ice wall was still erected in front of her. The little blue fish had been accumulating energy for too long, and its eyes had rolled over into the back of its head. It had no choice but to unleash its energy into the sky. Enlin, hee. What the *ck? Were these treasures left for the Heavenly Turtle Tribe and the Spirit Fish Clan? My dear ancestor, you're giving all your treasures to a human so that he can revitalize the entire human race. She had been on guard against Enlin eating her seafood this entire time, but who would have thought that the monsters of this world would also want to eat her seafood? The blue vortex instantly expanded to over 1 kilometer in size, and the power of extreme frost within the dark blue darkness froze and engulfed everything around it. Heaven and earth seemed to have sensed that its most powerful being had been slain, and a powerful spatial power enshrouded Enlin and Lan Xiaoni's bodies. Enlin shrugged and kicked the ball lightly without looking at Lan Xiaoni, who was trying to put on a cute front. A certain patch of golden sand suddenly exploded, and a ball burning with golden flames flew out, causing the temperature in the entire space to soar explosively. However, it didn't even get a chance to unleash its power before the vortex engulfed it. Enlin. So many powerful sandworms and super terrifying fireball monsters had been insta-killed? Lan Xiaoni let loose a delicate cry as the white ball materialized an ice wall in front of her. At the same time, she commanded the blue fish to open its mouth to accumulate powerful frost energy. Too late. Enlin let loose a light cry. Extreme frost vortex. Tsk. That's more like the hope of the entire spirit fish race. Enlin chuckled. A gratified smile appeared on the Shi-Heizi statue's face. What a harmonious couple. There's no need for any discussion. Gotcha. Enlin snatched the treasure away again, but she didn't get anything. She had obviously put in a lot of effort. Okay, the fireball seemed to be able to feel the terror of the vortex in Enlin's palm. Its spikes retracted, and its whole body trembled. Wait, the fireball contained an extremely terrifying power of fire. Wherever it passed, the void distorted, and the special golden sand on the sandy ground was instantly melted into high-temperature golden liquid. Lan Xiaoni had a mental breakdown, and she threw up a mouthful of blood. Bang! The golden spiked fireball let out a loud roar, and a dazzling golden light erupted from its body, as if it wanted to draw the flame power of the entire desert to resist Enlin's vortex. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted slightly upon seeing so many sandworms, and she was just about to take the initiative to attack. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face. I definitely will. Moments later, Enlin and Lan Xiaoni appeared in the cavernous chamber again. Get the *ck out here! Roar. A roar of pain intermingled with rage erupted. Enlin silently made his way toward the fireball that had been frozen into a block of ice. A gratified expression appeared on the Shi-Heizi statue's face. Congratulations, fated ones! You have successfully passed the trial of the Ball of Light. I hope you can take the treasures with you and revitalize your tribe. The vortex gradually subsided, and snow began to fall from heaven and earth. Boom, boom, boom. A ball of light appeared in front of the Shi-Heizi statue again, and it floated toward Enlin and Lan Xiaoni. Enlin picked up a shimmering golden ball from the ground and put it into his storage ring with a practiced motion. He was very familiar with killing bosses and obtaining treasures. The nauseating feeling of dizziness struck him again. The golden spiked fireball chortled with glee as two smaller fireballs appeared on either side of it, which it hurled toward Enlin and Lan Xiaoni. The 8 huge flaming sandworms didn't even have a chance to wail before they were frozen into pieces. And Lin stroked his chin and pondered for a moment before pointing at the green ball of light. Just the blue fish alone wasn't enough. This was her other trump card. At this moment, the statue began to move again. The sandworm opened its mouth to swallow Lan Xiaoni, and it was just about to chew on her when its body suddenly shuddered as a blue stream of energy exploded from within, instantly freezing the flaming sandworm's body and extinguishing its flames. Everything fell silent again. The power that Lan Xiaoni had just displayed was the power that belonged to the most powerful group of living beings of the soul formation stage. But she was only at the soul formation stage. She couldn't compare to Enlin. Lan Xiaoni. Tears almost flowed from Lan Xiaoni's eyes as she looked at the gargantuan flaming sandworm. A violent tremor erupted as the sandy ground caved in from his stomp. The ball of flames wailed with anguish like a drowning sun, but its voice grew softer and softer before it was engulfed by the power of extreme frost. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face as he clapped his hands together. When they separated again, a blue vortex appeared between his palms, and the power of extreme frost instantly extinguished the scorching heat within a radius of over a kilometer, only to be replaced by the frigid coldness of winter. Boom. Now, you still have a chance to enter the world of the ball of light and search for your opportunities. Enlin hated this type of spatial transfer method. It wasn't friendly at all. The mermaid princess was so frightened that she summoned another white ball and stared at the ball of flames with a fearful expression. The flaming sandworm was most likely at the soul formation final stage, but it was insta-killed by Lan Xiaoni. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted drastically upon seeing this. That powerful aura, that terrifying temperature. There's no mistaking it, it's the source of this world's heat. Golden Sun Chaotic Stone, a divine stone that exists within chaos. It's extremely sturdy and possesses powerful energy storage properties. It's a divine rank material. Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath. The value of this treasure had once again exceeded his imagination. The two of them happily reached an agreement. The ball of flames exploded into a vast amount of ice shards that rained down upon the earth. Heaven and earth were extremely cold, and the vortex was boundless. Roahahaha. Seeing as you're so eager to die, I'll grant your wish. Lan Xiaoni remained silent. Insta-killed? They're all dead? Lan Xiaoni stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before her eyes. Lan Xiaoni pointed toward the green ball of light expressionlessly. Lan Xiaoni's lips twitched, but she couldn't bring herself to smile. She was going to offer a salute to Enlin for his battle. Crack! Lan Xiaoni's entire body was enshrouded in a suit of ice, and a cold and proud expression appeared on her face as a fierce aura emanated from her body. There was a small blue fish swimming around her palm. The flaming sandworm's body exploded. Bam! Lan Xiaoni pouted with an aggrieved expression, but she didn't dare to say anything. The ball of flames was still shrieking in fear, but its expression had frozen. 8 more flaming sandworms with extremely powerful auras crawled out from the sand around them before glaring at the two of them with menacing expressions. Divine rank material. Unfortunately, the statues were like dumb NPCs, completely oblivious to this fact. Chapter 1041. A wave of nauseating dizziness swept over them again. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni appeared within a forest. They began to search for treasures of this world in the forest. The forest was very large, and there were all types of ferocious beasts and extremely poisonous plants attacking them. However, all of these malicious beasts were wiped out by Lan Xiaoni. Enlin couldn't be bothered to do anything, so Lan Xiaoni did her best to make her presence known and demonstrate her value, hoping that Enlin would see her efforts and reward her with a treasure of this world. Of course, this was only wishful thinking on her part. Enlin continued onward with a buoyant grin and didn't stop the mermaid from fawning over him. Why would he stop an underling from clearing monsters for him for free? Lan Xiaoni could handle normal dangers, so he didn't have to worry about her safety. The two of them continued onward into the forest. All of a sudden, An inky black vine broke through Lan Xiaoni's wall of water like a sharp sword before extending its flexible branches toward her. Ah! Lan Xiaoni screamed as her body was bound by the vines, temporarily immobilizing her. Inky black vines wrapped around Lan Xiaoni's long and sleek fishtail, and her slender waist was also tightly bound. Her snowy white arms were locked in place, and her chest was also bound by vines. Her snowy white breasts were almost about to pop out of the blue silk fabric. As Lan Xiaoni struggled, every inch of her body was revealed to the world. And Lin was astonished as he stared blankly at the erotic scenes unfolding before his eyes. Binding? How thrilling! Ha ha! Don't even think about getting close to the king of the forest. I'm going to bring an end to all of you. A huge black tree emerged from nearby with a sinister smile on its face. Another inky black vine pounced toward Lin at an extremely fast speed. Lin was just about to do something when a powerful aura suddenly erupted from nearby. King pervert die. Lan Xiaoni's enraged voice sounded. Water burst out of her body, pushing the vines away. Her body was like a fish swimming out of the range of the vines. At the same time, she controlled a small blue fish to pierce through the air and instantly puncture the giant tree monster's head. Die, die, die. Lan Xiaoni still hadn't vented her anger, and she manipulated the little blue fish to smash over 100 massive holes into the massive tree and shredded the vines into extremely tiny pieces of wood. In short, it was miserable. And Lin's horizons were greatly broadened as he witnessed Lan Xiaoni's transformation from a little kitten to a tigress. Lan Xiaoni was only slightly appeased after seeing that the giant tree monster was as dead as a doornail. Her face was flushed and she was breathing heavily. The snow-white peaks on her chest rose and fell with her breathing, giving her a different kind of charm. You didn't see anything, right? Lan Xiaoni bit down on her lower lip with a pitiable expression. The scene of being tied up was too shameful. She hoped that Lin would forget about it. Lin chuckled. How could I not see it? I'm not blind. You. Lan Xiaoni's eyes widened with rage, and her chest trembled with rage. What's wrong? I'm just telling the truth. Lin's eyes darkened as his imposing aura spread out. You're right. Lan Xiaoni lowered her head with an aggrieved expression. Thus, the two of them continued onward. Lan Xiaoni still hadn't recovered from the events that had just transpired, and the blush on her face had yet to recede. As they ventured deeper and deeper into the forest, monsters on par with the giant tree monster would appear from time to time. She didn't dare to get complacent, and she could only summon the little fish to protect herself. Ha ha! If you want to kill our king of the forest, you'll have to get past me first. Pwah! Lan Xiaoni slew a huge ape expressionlessly. I swear to protect the king of the forest with my life. Take this, lethal poison flying silk. Pwah! Long live the king of the forest. Lan Xiaoni slew a 100-legged red spider with a calm expression. I'm the demonic frog guardian. Your journey ends here. Boom boom boom, Lan Xiaoni engaged in a fierce battle with a frog wielding a pair of swords. Sword intent swept through the air, and spell techniques clashed, raising the forest within a radius of over a kilometer to the ground. In the end, Lan Xiaoni defeated the demonic frog guardian and sliced its body in half with her water blade. She turned toward Lin with a smug expression, as if to say, "Don't you think I'm bad *SS? Lin gave his underling a word of praise. Bad *SS. They then encountered the most powerful boss in the forest, the Greenwood Forest Dragon. Lin unleashed a sword strike in the blink of an eye, which almost sliced the entire forest in half. The Greenwood Forest Dragon had been insta-killed. Lan Xiaoni had been intimidated by the Greenwood Forest Dragon's terrifying aura, and the battle was over before she even had a chance to unleash her trump card. Lin stowed away the green jade tree root with a content expression on his face. He had insta-killed the boss and picked up the luxurious equipment. Lan Xiaoni. The mermaid princess finally shed tears of indignation. What was the point of her working so hard before? She had thought that she would have a chance to compete for the treasures in this forest. However, the king of the forest had been insta-killed before she even had a *king chance to do anything. Lan Xiaoni's expression was one of despair. She was struck by the horror of being dominated by Enlin's power again. She no longer had the confidence to compete with Enlin for the treasures. A rush of dizziness struck her. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni reappeared in the spacious room. Enlin unleashed his divine inspection technique on the green jade tree root with an elated expression. Sea essence primordial wood, a withered sea god tree from the western sea. It has survived tens of thousands of years of lightning strikes without being charred. This is a divine rank material that is condensed from the essence of life and lightning. Enlin was ecstatic. Another divine rank material. In terms of value, this divine rank material was even more valuable than immortal tools. This *King tomb was clearly giving him free money. Idiots and rich people were not enough to describe this tomb. However, thinking about it, this tomb was where 2 Dao integration stage high priests were buried, so it made sense that there wouldn't be any divine rank treasures here. Furthermore, this tomb was designed for the future soul formation stage prodigies of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe and Spirit Fish Clan. It couldn't just set up a return to void stage trial for these little cuties to die, could it? Hence, the upper limit for this trial was the hellish difficulty of the soul formation stage at most. What a pity that a hack like Enlin, who could even pummel return to void stage mighty figures, had come to this tomb. Enlin could only reluctantly accept all of these treasures. With this in mind, he turned toward Lan Xiaoni and heaved a forlorn sigh. Sigh, this trial is so boring. It's only giving me treasures, and it's only suitable for little cultivators like you. Lan Xiaoni was dumbstruck. She didn't think that Enlin would give her such a critical blow. She stared blankly at Enlin as tears began to flow from her eyes again. The mermaid princess sobbed. You said this trial is suitable for little cultivators like me, so why don't you let me have some fun? Enlin nodded. Sure. You can fight the monsters in the future, and I'll just pick up some treasures. PFFF. Lan Xiaoni threw up 3 liters of blood. Chapter 1042. Shi Haizi's statue spoke again. Congratulations, fated ones. You have successfully passed the green ball of light trial. I hope you can take the treasure with you and revitalize your tribe. Enlin patted his chest. Don't worry, senior, I'll definitely do it. What a familiar phrase. Lan Xiaoni had a mental breakdown. She really wanted to yell, High Priest, are you blind? Your descendant is here. I'm the future of the Merfolk tribe. You're giving the treasure to a human. Shi Haizi silently splayed his hands open, and the ball of light appeared before Enlin and Lan Xiaoni again. They were black, white, blue, and red. Enlin chose red. Lan Xiaoni also chose red with a resigned expression. A gratified smile appeared on Shi Haizi's face. What a harmonious couple! There's no need for any discussion. However, the man has to be more forgiving and loving to the woman. It's not a good thing to make the woman cry. Enlin was astonished. This ** knew how to give a friendly reminder like this? Was it really that intelligent? Lan Xiaoni clasped a hand over her heart. She didn't know what words to use to describe her current feelings. The statue standing before her was most likely not a fake high priest. The high priest's mighty and unfathomable image had been completely ruined by this stupid statue. The red ball of light began to radiate outward. They were struck by another rush of dizziness. When the 2 of them came to their senses, they had already arrived at a plain littered with skeletons. These skeletons were of different shapes and sizes, and it was clear that they had been piled together by countless different living beings. Some of their skeletons were relatively small, like that of a puppy, while others were the skeletons of gargantuan ferocious beasts. Just their bones alone were several hundred meters or even over a kilometer long. Enlin walked at the front, and Lan Xiaoni followed behind him in a very natural manner. This seemed to have become a type of tacit understanding. It wasn't until a ferocious wolf skeleton pounced toward Enlin that Enlin realized something was different. The ferocious wolf was unimpeded, and it opened its mouth before biting down on Enlin's head. The ferocious wolf bit down on Enlin's neck, intending to tear his entire head off. Gotcha! Accompanied by some kind of cracking sound, the wolf's teeth broke. Enlin coldly snorted, and with a burst of powerful true essence, the vicious wolf's bones began to crack, and in an instant it turned into ashes. He turned toward Lan Xiaoni with a curious expression. "Why aren't you fighting anymore? Weren't these monsters supposed to be enemies for Lan Xiaoni to display her value?" Lan Xiaoni's eyes were lifeless, but a smile appeared on her face. "I'll help you fight the monsters and you'll pick up the treasures? Enlin, you can actually fight with me for the boss and the treasure." "I really don't mind," Enlin comforted. Lan Xiaoni buried her head in her hands with despair on her face. "I just can't beat you. You can slap me to death with a single slap. What do I have to fight with you? Whoa. There's no point in me coming here. I can only follow behind you like a fool and watch you take the treasures. I can't do anything. I really don't know why I came to this tomb." The mermaid princess burst into tears again. "You're right." Enlin nodded. "Then why are you still here? Why don't you go back?" Lan Xiaoni faltered slightly upon hearing this, and she stopped crying. Her bright blue eyes widened, and there were still tears flowing down her cheeks. "That's right, why don't I go back? I'm going back right now." Slap! Lan Xiaoni's snowy white shoulders were pressed down by Enlin's hands. Their eyes met. Enlin spoke with an earnest expression. "No, you can't go back. I know why you're here." "What is it?" Lan Xiaoni asked with an expectant expression. "After you leave, I'll also be judged as an enemy by the tomb, so your value is to stay here and not trigger the tomb's mechanism so that I can obtain more treasures." Enlin spoke with an excited expression. "Lan Xiaoni." Everyone suddenly fell silent. A tragic smile suddenly appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face. "Just let me die. Please don't." Enlin immediately tried to stop her, and his mind raced as he tried to think of a way to calm down this mermaid princess. Lan Xiaoni's eyes were red, and her face was filled with tears. She was crying silently, so this was most likely the result of her advanced level of pain. Enlin was extremely concerned. Was Lan Xiaoni made of water? Why did she cry so easily? So be it if she didn't cry, but her tears were still flowing non-stop. If she wanted to give up, Enlin would be targeted by the tomb. Otherwise, why would he care about what the mermaid princess was thinking? He could just toss her to the side. He had to give her hope and reignite her fighting spirit. Got it? Enlin's eyes lit up. Ahem, how about this? I promise you that I won't attack when we encounter a monster with a treasure. I'll attack after a minute. I'll give you a chance to defeat the monster. How about that? Enlin proposed. Really? Lan Xiaoni drew a sharp intake of breath as she stared at Enlin with incredulity on her face. Enlin nodded with a solemn expression. I swear on my integrity. That's great. Thank you for giving me a chance. Lan Xiaoni wrapped her arms around Enlin with excitement. Enlin was caught off guard and taken advantage of. Lan Xiaoni's body was extremely soft, as if she didn't have any bones, and her voluptuous breasts assaulted Enlin's chest, making Enlin's blood boil. Don't even think of using the mermaid trick to covet my beauty. Enlin pushed away the warm, fragrant body in his arms with a serious expression. Get away from me. Your seafood scent is too strong. Lan Xiaoni's chest trembled with rage and she clenched her fists. However, her rage was overshadowed by excitement and elation in the end. She decided not to bicker with someone like this. She was going to fight for the future of the Spirit Fish Clan and fight for the treasures. Lan Xiaoni's body fragrance was actually quite pleasant. It was fresh and elegant, but it was also tinged with a hint of vastness, like the fragrance of flowers on an island. The reason why Lin said it smelled like seafood was mainly because Lan Xiaoni's fishtail was making him think too much about other things. The two of them continued onward. Lan Xiaoni was extremely motivated, and she dealt with the monsters in high spirits, taking on the role of a lackey. Mr. Lin, you don't need to do anything. I'll do it. Don't attack him, Crimson Bone Crocodile, I'm your opponent. Heh. A bunch of trash. Come at me together. Lan Xiaoni displayed the poise of a prodigy as she slaughtered all the monsters that she encountered. In Lan Xiaoni's words, killing these monsters was a warm-up for her in preparation for the final boss. Lin nodded with a smile and offered some comments from time to time. Who wouldn't like such an enthusiastic lackey? Thus, the two of them continued onward toward the place where the aura of death and blood was the most abundant. Neither of them realized that they were slowly becoming more and more out of character. Finally, after a while, Lan Xiaoni had encountered the final monster of her dreams. Chapter 1043. This was a crimson humanoid skeleton with a big head, and it held a bone whip with sharp bone spikes protruding from its hand. Lin felt like this creature was a little familiar. Kukoku! The big-headed skeleton cackled menacingly as the whip in its hand lashed through the air toward Lan Xiaoni. Time begins. Lin silently pressed a stopwatch. Lan Xiaoni's battle intent was extremely high, and she let loose a delicate cry before pouncing toward the big-headed skeleton instead of retreating. She activated the white ball to materialize a wall of ice beside her, and at the same time, she activated the little blue fish, which transformed into a streak of light that crashed directly toward the big-headed skeleton's head. The bone whip clashed with the ice wall, sending ice shards flying through the air. This was one of Lan Xiaoni's trump cards, and it was quite powerful to be able to block an attack from a boss. At this moment, Lan Xiaoni had already activated the little blue fish to ram into the big-headed skeleton's head. The treasure of this world is mine. Lan Xiaoni yelled with excitement on her face. However, right at this moment, a peculiar smile suddenly appeared on the big-headed skeleton's face. Koku! Boom! The big-headed skeleton's head was crushed by the little blue fish. Before Lan Xiaoni had a chance to figure out what the skeleton's smile was, a bony fist was already hurtling through the air before striking Lan Xiaoni's pristine, white lower abdomen. Another earth-shattering boom erupted as the shock wave shattered the ground within a radius of over a kilometer. A searing pain shot through Lan Xiaoni's body, and she threw up a mouthful of blood as her body was sent flying back by the immense force. Never would she have thought that the skeleton monster would still be able to move after having its head crushed. A faint smile appeared on Lin's face upon seeing this. Did she really think he would be so kind as to give Lan Xiaoni a chance to obtain the treasure? There was indeed a chance, but it was very slim. Lan Xiaoni had underestimated the power of world bosses far too much. Lin could insta-kill world bosses, but that didn't mean that world bosses were weak. One had to realize that even a return to void stage mighty figure would be fearful of an attack from Lin, so how could he compare to Lan Xiaoni? A world boss was at least at the soul formation pinnacle stage. How could Lan Xiaoni defeat such a powerful opponent in under a minute? That was impossible. The headless skeleton pounced toward Lan Xiaoni with its bone whip before lashing out again. Pa! Lan Xiaoni's lower abdomen was struck by the whip, and a bloody gash appeared on her waist. She couldn't care less about her injuries. She immediately urged the little blue fish to defend herself in an attempt to restrain the headless skeleton. The headless skeleton wielded the bone whip with an extremely exquisite technique. It changed the angle of the bone whip at an extremely fast speed and swung it toward the little blue fish with tremendous force. The collision of the two caused a loud explosion. The small blue fish was sent flying by the bone whip with an extremely powerful momentum. The headless skeleton gripped the air in Lan Xiaoni's direction. Kacha, space, suddenly froze, and everything within the range was fixed like a painting. Lin's heart skipped a beat. This blood-colored headless skeleton had actually used a spatial seal. The skeleton's overall combat prowess was slightly more powerful than the previous two, but it was still only at the soul formation pinnacle stage. If it unleashed its full power, it could unleash an attack comparable to that of a rookie return to void stage mighty figure. However, it was unreasonable for them to use spatial spells in a place like this. The headless skeleton's laughter reverberated through the air. The bone whip suddenly froze, and its edges became extremely sharp as it transformed into a long bone saber. It stepped forward and quickly approached the immobilized Lan Xiaoni with the bone saber in its hand. An expression of despair appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face. She still had many trump cards and mystic techniques that she hadn't used, but now that the space around her had been frozen, she didn't even have a chance to resist. Was this the end? The crimson bone saber slashed through the air, leaving a crimson trail of death in its wake. Lan Xiaoni was very indignant and she wanted to cry. However, she didn't even have the right to cry in this spatial seal. The bone saber fell. A figure suddenly appeared before her and blocked the bone saber with an inky black longsword. Boom! A violent collision swept his hair into the air. The man knocked the bone saber aside at an extremely fast speed before unleashing a boundless sword projection. An inky black sword projection engulfed heaven and earth as it sliced the headless skeleton in half. The skeleton didn't even have a chance to react before his life force was severed. Another insta-kill. Lan Xiaoni stared blankly at the figure. Enlin, tears welled up in the mermaid princess' eyes as her emotions welled up. This was different from the despair she felt when she saw Enlin insta-kill the boss. This time, a certain chord in her heart was tugged at by Enlin's insta-kill. She was beyond touched. Lan Xiaoni had been following this figure ever since she entered the tomb. No matter what dangers they encountered, she felt as if there was nothing to be afraid of as long as he was there. This figure was so reliable, and he gave her an indescribable feeling. Lan Xiaoni, I didn't keep my promise. You won't blame me for waiting for a minute, right? Enlin didn't turn around, and he spoke in a gentle voice. Yes, I don't blame you. Thank you, Enlin. I was too stubborn. Tears flowed from Lan Xiaoni's eyes as she spoke with both gratitude and self-reproach. Enlin nodded. I'll go buy a few oranges. Stay here and don't move. Okay. Lan Xiaoni nodded obediently. What oranges? She came to her senses and turned to look at Enlin with confusion in her eyes. Enlin made his way over to the shattered bones and pulled out a red bone before putting it away into his storage ring with elation on his face. Lan Xiaoni. For some reason, she felt a little less touched. Heaven and earth spun around them. The two of them returned to the statue of Shihaizi. The statue of Shihaizi spoke again. Congratulations, fated ones, on successfully passing the trial of the red ball of light. I hope you can take the treasures with you to revitalize your tribe. Enlin patted his chest. Don't worry, Senior, I'll definitely do it. A smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face as she looked at Enlin. Here, these are oranges, the supreme oranges produced in the southern Heavenly Wing Nation. They're quite delicious. Enlin tossed 2 oranges that were about the size of watermelons toward Lan Xiaoni. His underling had worked hard to clear out the monsters, so as the big brother, he naturally had to give them some benefits. This was the way of managing others, and Enlin was naturally not going to forget this. Lan Xiaoni hugged the oranges in her arms, and was at a complete loss for what to do for an instant. She didn't know whether it was because the oranges were too big or because Enlin had suddenly given her a present. For some reason, a peculiar feeling welled up in her heart. Thank you, Lan Xiaoni said in a faint voice. These were 2 9th-grade spirit fruit. As a princess who lived in the Sea Heart Palace for many years, they weren't all that valuable, but she still carefully stowed them away. This was her labor fee, so it was quite significant. If all of the treasures in the tomb were taken by Enlin and she came out empty-handed, if the high priest and her father asked her about the treasures in the tomb, she could still give them 2 large oranges. Chapter 1044. That's right, Lan Xiaoni was already prepared to receive nothing. Anyone would be struck by despair in the face of Enlin's monstrous power. Enlin used his divine inspection technique to appraise the red bone in his hand. Bone of the Dead Emperor, a Dao integration stage divine monster. This is the essential Dao bone of the West Sea Dead Emperor. It contains an extremely powerful intent realm and essential power of death, and is a divine rank material. Enlin's hand trembled slightly as he held the bone. F***CK. Even a Dao integration stage Dao bone appeared. Another divine rank material. A bold idea suddenly appeared in his mind. He had obtained 3 divine rank materials in a row up to this point. If there were also divine rank materials later on, would he be able to use these materials to forge a divine rank weapon? A divine rank weapon, and Lin was extremely excited at this thought. This was a feasible idea. The Shi Haizi statue released another ball of light. This time, there were only 3 balls of light, black, white, and blue. 2 faded ones. You can continue to challenge us and obtain the treasures we left behind. And Lin thought about it for a moment before choosing the blue ball of light. Lan Xiaoni obediently chose the blue ball of light as well. A gratified smile appeared on the Shi Haizi statue's face. What a harmonious couple! There's no need for any discussion. The man is even giving a gift to the woman, which is very beneficial to their relationship. And Lin looked at the crazed statue and repressed the urge to lash out at it. Why was this statue talking so much nonsense? It even had a gossipy expression on its face. Was it poisonous? If it weren't for the fact that it was a statue that could only speak, and Lin couldn't be bothered to deal with it. If it weren't for the fact that it was a statue that could only speak, it would have most likely been reduced to dust already. The blue ball of light expanded and enshrouded the 2 of them. Space warped and transformed. An extremely terrifying pressure suddenly swept toward them. And Lin's expression shifted, and he instinctively used his vital energy to protect his body. Lan Xiaoni seemed to be accustomed to this kind of pressure. Not only did she not need to unleash any spell techniques to defend herself, but she also felt very comfortable. A glimmer of light flashed through her blue eyes as she said in surprise, "We've come to the deep sea. This time, we're in the underwater world?" And Lin glanced at the pitch-black surroundings and the powerful water pressure that was constantly assaulting him. He nodded and said, "Looks like we're at the bottom of the sea. Judging from the pressure, it should be at least 50,000 meters deep, right?" Lan Xiaoni nodded. "About 53,060 meters. She was a mermaid, so she was more sensitive to the ocean." Lan Xiaoni pointed in a certain direction as she spoke. "Then, the power of water there is more powerful. Can we go there and have a look?" Looking at the mermaid princess who didn't have any backbone even at the bottom of the sea, and Lin couldn't help but find it funny. He nodded and said, "Let's go." And Lin swam toward the direction that Lan Xiaoni was pointing in, and he encountered a few deep-sea monsters along the way. However, all of them were taken care of by Lan Xiaoni, and he didn't even get a chance to approach them. And Lin could sense that Lan Xiaoni's powers had improved in all aspects in the deep sea, and it looked like this was also a result of the environment. After traveling for a short while, a white palace began to appear in their field of vision. The dome was made of white jade, and it was supported by stone pillars with divine fish engravings on them. It was pristine, flawless, and extremely beautiful. Could it be that the final treasure-wielding monster is in the palace? And Lin's interest was piqued, and he immediately pushed open the palace gate. However, what he didn't expect was that the scene behind the gate was completely different. A blue restrictive barrier appeared in front of him, and ripples spread out from it. Within the barrier was a single plank bridge that extended into the distance. There was a vast expanse of unfathomable darkness all around. There were circular hovering plates on either side of the palace, upon which stood a few dozen sea monsters of different appearances, all of which were wielding weapons. The depth of this palace doesn't make sense. And Lin was a little surprised. From the outside, the palace was only around 1,000 feet in size at most. However, just the bridge alone was over 10,000 feet in length. Perhaps this palace is also an independent mystic realm. Lan Xiaoni made her way forward, and she seemed to have sensed something as she laid a hand on the blue barrier. However, she found that the barrier was like a curtain of water, and she passed right through it. Is this a wall of water? Unlin was quite intrigued, and he also made his way toward the barrier. Boom! Unlin's body was plastered against the barrier, and he was knocked back a couple of steps by the massive force. Lan Xiaoni turned to look at Unlin with confusion on her face. An expression of confusion appeared on Unlin's face. He launched a fist toward the barrier. Boom! Unlin was knocked back a few steps by a massive force, but the barrier remained completely unscathed. Unlin, Lan Xiaoni. Lan Xiaoni's eyes widened. You can't come in? Unlin took a deep breath as a white light flashed through his eyes. Divine Inspection Technique. A terrifyingly dense array of energy appeared before his eyes, stacking on top of one another to form an indestructible barrier. Unlin was astonished. This was not some spell formation. This was a collection of energy. This was a pure defensive spell technique, so there was no way he could take advantage of it. Lan Xiaoni's eyes gradually lit up at the sight of Unlin's distressed expression. Could it be that only those with noble blood like mine have the right to enter this place? Unlin's expression darkened. Please watch your language. Lan Xiaoni smiled for the first time. Her smile was as vibrant as a flower, and she was extremely elated. Ha ha! Even Unlin would have such a day like this. This is fate. She placed her hands on her hips and looked at Unlin with an extremely smug expression. This time, the treasure is mine. After waiting for so long, I finally have a chance to turn the tables. High Priest, Father, Big Brother, Little Brother, and all of the Spirit Fish Clan brethren, I have not let you down. I, Lan Xiaoni, have done it. Ha ha! Ha ha ha! Lan Xiaoni laughed heartily, and even began to hum a Spirit Fish Clan song. Us commoners are so happy today. La 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 la. Unlin stared at the woman before him with astonishment on his face. Has she gone insane? Just how much grievance had she been holding back for her to be able to laugh so happily? Lan Xiaoni laughed for a long while before finally feeling satisfied, and she waved a hand at Unlin. Unlin, this is fate. I'm going to go now. I won't be holding back on this treasure. Bye-bye. Lan Xiaoni turned to Unlin as she spoke. Unlin wore a resigned expression. He couldn't think of a way out of this situation. This was not a soul formation stage or return to void stage barrier. Instead, it was a Dao integration stage barrier. In other words, this was something that the High Priest of the Spirit Fish Clan had designed in order to open a backdoor for his juniors. From a certain perspective, Lan Xiaoni was right when she said that he had a noble bloodline. What could Unlin do? He was also in despair. However, Unlin still had a sliver of hope. A faint smile appeared on his face as he looked at Lan Xiaoni's departing figure. Chapter 1045. An earth-shattering boom erupted as the little blue fish clashed with the silver trident. Jida nodded with a smile. I'll naturally give you the treasure you want, princess. Water formation wall. Lan Xiaoni let loose a clear cry as a barrier constructed from divine water appeared before her. Lan Xiaoni screamed as her body plummeted from the sky. Unlin's eyes widened with incredulity. Spatial seal. Azure snake. Jida waved his left hand through the air, and over 100 tiny blue snakes imbued with the extremely pure power of water pounced toward Lan Xiaoni. At the same time, he stabbed his silver trident toward the little blue fish. The silver trident struck the water barrier, upon which an extremely dazzling light flashed. Unlin was astonished. So the reason why Lan Xiaoni was angry was because of his looks? Lan Xiaoni was also given a huge fright, and the little blue fish almost fell to the ground. Lan Xiaoni placed her hands on her hip. Hurry up and kneel before me and offer up your treasure. Perhaps I'll be happy and spare your life if you do that. The most important thing to obtain a treasure was power. I'll use my power to prove that this treasure is destined to be mine. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? How dare you propose to me when you're so ugly? The mermaid princess activated the little blue fish and the white ball at the same time to attack Jida. This was a spatial countermeasure trump card that could ignore the enemy's spatial seal. Lan Xiaoni's eyes widened with incredulity as she stared at the octopus monster before her. The little blue fish transformed into a bolt of lightning before crashing toward Jida's back. Spatial flow. Lan Xiaoni tossed out a talisman before she even landed on the ground. Soon, her expression brightened and she chortled with glee. Ha ha! Anlin, do you see that? This is fate's choice. This treasure can only belong to me. Couldn't Shi Haizi just toss the treasure to Lan Xiaoni if he wanted to open the back door so badly? Anlin promised that he wouldn't say a single word. All of the sea monsters knelt down to greet their regal princess. The octopus monster stood up from its throne before extending a slight bow toward Lan Xiaoni with a smile. My beautiful princess, welcome to the solitary wood palace. I am Jida. Lan Xiaoni was ecstatic. She didn't think that her method of forcefully demanding treasures would actually work. In that case, she would be able to live up to everyone's expectations and bring back some of her ancestors' inheritances. At this moment, Jida had already charged toward Lan Xiaoni, and his silver trident pierced through space toward Lan Xiaoni. The energy of the silver trident exploded, and the water array wall was broken. Hualala, why bother with the trial of the light ball? Even the sirens were worshipping this salted fish. Would the final boss kneel on the ground and beg this salted fish to cut off its head? Asterisk crack. Asterisk everything in the area stopped moving. Taking advantage of Jida's momentary daze, Lan Xiaoni unleashed all of her power to activate the little blue fish behind Jida as she retreated. Lan Xiaoni turned around and glared at Anlin before letting out a cold harumph and continuing onward. What else could Anlin say? He had no choice but to kneel in front of this invincible backdoor entrant. Lan Xiaoni activated the white ball to unleash a series of silvery white ice swords to slice through Jida's little snake. Silly girl, did you really think? Her brows furrowed slightly. This wooden bridge didn't look as long as it did. There was some kind of concealment spell technique that made it impossible to see the end of the bridge. This salted fish was very smug. Go to hell. The treasures are mine. Ha ha ha. Lan Xiaoni felt like she was floating in the air at the sight of Anlin's enraged expression. All of the frustrations in her heart had been resolved, and she hummed a song as she made her way toward the end of the wooden bridge. Boom. WH. What did you say? If you marry me, everything here will be yours. Jida pointed at every part of the palace as he looked at Lan Xiaoni with a scorching gaze. I can smell your fragrance, and I can sense your beautiful appearance. I can sense your bloodline, and I can only look up to it. I want you. She flew toward the wooden bridge just like that, and a power that restricted flight suddenly descended. There was a golden throne at the end of the wooden bridge. There was a monster with dark golden skin on the throne. It had the head of an octopus and the body of a human, and it was holding a silvery white trident in its hand. Boom. Jida's explosive power was already comparable to that of a rookie return to void stage mighty figure. Boundless power erupted from the tip of the trident, and the little blue fish was knocked flying. This sentence was like a bolt of lightning that struck Lan Xiaoni like a bolt of lightning. Anlin was just about to enjoy the show when an extremely shocking scene unfolded. The sea monsters' voices were extremely loud and clear. However, a mysterious smile suddenly appeared on Jida's face, and a hint of greed flashed through his eyes as he looked at Lan Xiaoni. Princess, the prerequisite is that you have to marry me and become my woman. Ever since the concealment spell technique had been dispelled, Anlin had also witnessed the scenes unfolding before his eyes. He was slightly dumbstruck. He didn't think that things would develop like this. Terrifying shockwaves erupted forth for over a kilometer, but they were unable to destroy the wooden bridge. It looked like the wooden bridge was made of some special materials. She had to say those words now. She had no choice but to wiggle her tail and slowly walk forward. You're courting death. Unlin, F***ck off. All of the sea monsters suddenly half-knelt on the wooden bridge and lowered their heads. We pay our respects to Princess Spirit Fish. The talismans burned in the air before casting a layer of light over her body. However, they would probably say those words. The sea monsters on both sides of the bridge suddenly opened their eyes at this moment, and they raised the weapons in their hands as extremely powerful auras erupted from their bodies. The mermaid princess was naturally aware of this as well, so she had already activated the white ball and the little blue fish to protect herself before the sea monsters had a chance to do anything. Lan Xiaoni finally exploded, and a powerful force erupted forth, blasting through the air around her. F***ck. I'm treating you guys as enemies, and you're bowing down to me? Unlin looked on at Lan Xiaoni's departing figure with a buoyant smile. Be careful, underling Lan. Don't die on the bridge. Lan Xiaoni didn't really care that her boss was only saluting instead of kneeling down. She extended a slender hand. Jida, give me your treasures and I'll leave. Lan Xiaoni continued onward, and the end of the wooden bridge suddenly appeared before her. Boom. This was most likely the final boss of this level. I'll make you fall in love with me. I'm ugly, but you'll be mesmerized by my soul. The octopus monster pounced toward Lan Xiaoni with a scorching light in its eyes, and its tentacles wriggled incessantly, clearly very excited. Lan Xiaoni gritted her teeth, and a brilliant light erupted from her body as she retreated in an extremely agile manner, escaping from Jida's spatial seal. Lan Xiaoni's battle with the big-headed skeleton was a clear example of how difficult it was to kill the boss in the light ball world. Whether or not she could defeat it was another matter entirely. How could this be? Jida's expression shifted. You think you're going to get the treasures if I don't go in? Lan Xiaoni was already prepared for this, and she let loose a clear cry before unleashing a defensive spell technique. Lan Xiaoni's body was blasted back toward the wooden bridge behind her. Jida extended his dark golden left hand and gripped the air as he spoke. Chapter 1046. On the other hand, Jida was gaining the upper hand. Boom. At this moment, for some reason, she suddenly thought of that figure. That was an unforgettable figure that gave her a sense of security. Even Lin's expression shifted slightly upon seeing that terrifying power. The fist was imbued with terrifying power, and even the space around it crumbled. Soon, she broke through the barrier of blue ripples without any resistance and pounced toward Lin like a swallow. Save me, Papa! She yelled in her sweet voice. Lin was astonished. To think that a member of the Spirit Fish clan can unleash such pure dragon power. Stop her! Jida roared from behind Lan Xiaoni. Boom! Lin. Jida only managed to stop his retreat after smashing his throne into smithereens. His blood didn't splatter. Instead, it swirled around his snowy white arms in a spiral. Child's play. Jida clapped his hands together, and the blizzard was shattered. Damn it, I can't lose here. Are you kidding me? This was the first time he had heard such a refreshing reply. Daddy, save me! Lan Xiaoni yelled. A terrifying collision erupted, accompanied by a special hissing sound of cracking. However, Lin had no intention of helping her. A mocking expression appeared on his face. Wouldn't it be very embarrassing for me to help you now that you're asking me to help you? His arms were already empty, but his body squirmed as his dark golden body slowly shrank. In its place, a pair of arms slowly grew out. He took the initiative to attack Lan Xiaoni again as he spoke. Lin, Snowstorm Formation. A powerful spell technique engulfed the entire bridge. Lan Xiaoni's face became paler and paler, and she was clearly on the brink of exhaustion. You don't have to fight me, he. Jida's expression shifted drastically as he crossed his arms in front of him. It crashed into Jida's back, and a fearsome shockwave erupted. A vicious expression appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face as she retreated, and she sliced open her wrist. At this moment it saw the mermaid princess, who was so aggressive just a moment ago, turn around and run. Unlin! Several dozen sea monsters on either side of the bridge suddenly sprang into action before unleashing spell techniques toward Lan Xiaoni. Did it work? Not long after the battle, she was surrounded by danger. 2 bloody wounds appeared on her snow-white arms, and a bloody wound appeared on her slender fishtail, which was glowing with a blue light. One had to know that Kid was defenseless. The opportunity to receive an attack was not easy to come by. Was it really okay to admit it so directly? Outside the barrier, Unlin was speechless when he saw this scene. Cough, cough. That's right, Lan Xiaoni immediately activated her escape mode. An earth-shattering dragon roar erupted, and a vast divine might shook the heavens and earth. It's called Papa. Unlin chuckled. Rumble. An extremely powerful crimson light erupted from Lan Xiaoni's arm. Why now? Do you still want to fight? I'll accompany you anytime. Lan Xiaoni was not elated in the slightest. Unlin chuckled coldly. Which idiot was the one who said that only those with noble blood could enter and that the treasures belonged to you? Is this the choice of fate? Unlin, save me. She squeezed her body into her arms as if she were squeezing dough. The white ball was responsible for defending against the sea monster's attacks, while the little blue fish was responsible for keeping Kid occupied. Lan Xiaoni's escape was extremely arduous. Kid didn't think that Lan Xiaoni would have the power to break free from his spatial seal. Just as he was feeling astonished, the little blue fish had already crashed into his body. Lan Xiaoni was quite powerful, and had trump cards like the little blue fish and the white bead, but it was still too much for her to handle a rookie return to void stage mighty figure. Kid let loose a wail of anguish. His extremely sturdy dark golden arms were shattered by Lan Xiaoni's punch, and his body was sent flying backward by the fearsome force of the punch. It's me. I'm that idiot. Tears of remorse flowed from Lan Xiaoni's eyes. That spirit fish divine blood mystic technique, fish dragon dance, had expended almost all of her energy, but she was still unable to kill Kid. How was she going to fight now? After unleashing that mystic technique, Lan Xiaoni's aura was extremely feeble, and she panted heavily as she stared intently at Kid. A sinister smile appeared on Kid's face as the feelers on his chin slid through the air. He even hooked his feelers at Lan Xiaoni, as if he was flirting with her. A blue figure leaped out from the explosion of energy. Her long, black hair danced behind her as a suit of ice-blue armor appeared over her jade-like skin. After landing on the ground, she continued to rush toward Unlin. Lan Xiaoni's tail whipped through the air, and she closed in instead of retreating. She clenched her right hand into a fist, and a crimson divine dragon seemed to have appeared on her arm as she lashed out like a dragon. Boom! All types of negative emotions began to well up in her heart. I know you're not my father, so I'll just coax you a little. Lan Xiaoni twisted her body and evaded Kid's attack by a hair's breadth. Lan Xiaoni suddenly let loose a delicate cry, and she waved her hand through the air. Countless splashes of water transformed into a blizzard imbued with killing intent that swept toward Kid. Lan Xiaoni's body trembled with disgust, horror, and helplessness. Lan Xiaoni glowered at Kid, and she waved her hand to summon back the little blue fish. She retreated as she fought, and it was clear that she was already on the back foot. Don't you feel any shame or guilt? Unlin was astonished. The boss was blatantly trying to take Lan Xiaoni for himself. Wasn't that a crime? Why didn't he consider the spectators' feelings? Kid waved his silver trident through the air, and a silver blade projection several hundred meters in length shot toward Lan Xiaoni with each strike. How could this be? Was this mermaid princess afraid of death to this extent? Unlin. She had initially planned to puncture Kid's body in one go, but to her surprise, The little blue fish's full-force attack was only able to inflict a minor injury on Kid. Jida's back caved in from the impact, and his body flew toward Lan Xiaoni amid the sound of bones and flesh exploding. He threw up a mouthful of green blood at the same time. "What do you want?" Lan Xiaoni's tail was almost punctured by Kid's harpoon, and she ran even faster. Kid wasn't enraged by Lan Xiaoni's attack. Instead, he chortled with glee. "You're quite bold, I like it. However, I'm stronger than you can imagine. You won't be able to defeat me, so just submit to me." The little blue fish's momentum made even the air tremble. "This is my best chance. I can't lose." Kid coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood and stood up with great difficulty. "That was close. If you had struck me in the heart, I might have died." Kid's aura soared explosively as he looked at Lan Xiaoni, and it looked like he could still fight. Lan Xiaoni retreated a few steps with despair on her face. "Spirit Fish Divine Blood Mystic Technique, Fish Dragon Dance. Ha ha. Stop resisting. If you want to resist, resist in bed." Chapter 1047. You have to pay for what you've done. Lan Xiaoni finally understood the meaning of this sentence. That's right, she didn't have a chance to gloat for long. She then pounced toward Enlin like a salted fish, trying to grab onto Enlin's thigh tightly. The blue rippling barrier clearly didn't have any effect on the sea monsters, and Jida also chased after Lan Xiaoni as he charged out. "Don't block the way." Enlin wrapped his left arm around Lan Xiaoni's soft and warm waist and flung her to the side. At this moment, Jida's silver trident was already hurtling toward him with a terrifying power. Enlin didn't even have time to draw his sword, so he grabbed toward the silver trident with his bare hands. Boom! Terrifying energy exploded forth, and the silver trident was caught by Enlin with his bare hands. The peerlessly sharp trident was unable to even pierce through Enlin's skin. Jida's eyes widened. "How is this possible?" Enlin's lips curled up into a slight smile. "I'm also very frustrated. I'm always so bad *SS that you guys think it's impossible, but this is the reality." His voice had only just fallen when Enlin's other fist had already lashed out. This fist was aimed directly at Jida's chest. There were no spell techniques or energy fluctuations emanating from it, and it was purely a counterattack using the power of his physical body. However, Jida could sense a power that was comparable to Lan Xiaoni's final mystic technique. There was no time to evade. Boom! A massive hole was punched into Jida's sturdy dark golden body. PFFF. Jida threw up a mouthful of blood as his body flew back. The octopus monster crashed into the rippling barrier and tumbled onto the wooden bridge. Enlin unleashed another bolt of golden void lightning toward it. The golden void lightning tore through the air toward the octopus monster. Boom! The bolt of golden lightning exploded upon contact with the rippling barrier. Enlin, F*CK. I forgot about this F*King racist barrier. Who would have thought that it could even completely isolate external spells? What was the point of fighting? Gid was lying on the ground with serious injuries. When he saw that Enlin could not take the next step, he finally laughed. "Ha ha, so what if you're powerful? If you can't cross this barrier, I'll always be the man you can't get." The corner of Enlin's mouth twitched. It was one thing for him to look disgusting, but why did he have to say those words to disgust him? Suddenly, a blue figure crossed the barrier, holding an azure ice blade, and slashed at Kid, who was heavily injured and lying on the ground. This slash seemed to have exhausted all of the woman's strength, and its power was extremely terrifying. "No!" Jida screamed as his body was cut in half by the ice blade. Enlin couldn't cross this barrier, but Lan Xiaoni could. Lan Xiaoni's ice blade dissipated, and her features were extremely pale. Her body swayed slightly as if she was about to collapse to the ground from exhaustion, but she forcibly stabilized herself. She bent her fishtail, slowly squatted down, and touched Kid's body. Enlin. He was very familiar with killing a boss and looting the corpse. After all, he had always done this before. However, the roles were reversed this time. Lan Xiaoni was the final winner, and Enlin could only look on helplessly from the sidelines. Enlin's expression was filled with despair. Was this fate? After so many twists and turns, he still missed out on this treasure. His dream of forging a divine tool seemed to be even further away. Lan Xiaoni pulled out a treasure that resembled a blue teardrop. The treasure exuded a gentle glow, and it didn't appear to be a priceless treasure. However, Lan Xiaoni could sense a boundless power from it, as if it were a boundless ocean. A satisfied smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face, and she gripped the blue teardrop treasure tightly in her hand before walking out of the barrier. I won. Lan Xiaoni waved the blue teardrop in her hand triumphantly as she looked at Enlin. Enlin shook his head and heaved a forlorn sigh. Perhaps this is fate. This blue ball of light world was simply destined to deliver a treasure to Lan Xiaoni. Everything had been king set in stone, so what could Enlin say? A fragrant aroma wafted toward him. Enlin raised his head to discover that a pair of slender hands had appeared before him, holding a blue teardrop. The light was gentle and tranquil, and it was extremely soothing. He turned to look at the woman before him with astonishment on his face. An extremely righteous smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's deathly pale features. I, Lan Xiaoni, am a very grateful person. I'll give this teardrop to you as repayment for saving my life. Enlin was completely dumbstruck. Lan Xiaoni was gifting him a divine rank material? This turn of events was far too sudden, and he was struggling to accept it. Lan Xiaoni's ecstatic expression after learning that she had a chance to obtain a treasure was still vivid in Enlin's mind. A treasure left behind by an ancestor was extremely important to her. It was very likely that this was the only treasure she had a chance to obtain on this trip. However, she was willing to hand over a treasure that she had obtained after countless trials and tribulations? Oi, what are you waiting for? If you don't want it, I'll keep it for myself. Lan Xiaoni snapped in a clear voice. I want it! I want it! Enlin accepted the treasure with a grateful expression on his face. Thank you, you're such a good girl. Lan Xiaoni. Is that a compliment? Enlin came to his senses and corrected himself. You're the most talented spirit fish clan cultivator I've ever seen. A smug smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face. Of course. She's so easy to please, Enlin thought to himself. After the treasure was taken, the feeling of heaven and earth transforming swept over them again. The space around them warped, and the two of them appeared before Shihaizi's statue again. Congratulations on passing the trial of the blue ball of light, fated ones. I hope you can take the treasure with you and use it to revitalize your tribe. Shihaizi's voice sounded again. Enlin patted his chest with a content expression. Don't worry, Senior, I will. This scene had repeated itself countless times, and it was a cycle that struck despair into their hearts. Lan Xiaoni felt a little suffocated, and her face paled even further. She had overexerted herself after using a mystic technique, so she could only swallow a blood spirit pill. At this moment, a hand extended toward her. There was a red fruit exuding extremely powerful life force fluctuations on the palm of the hand, and one could tell that it was an extraordinary fruit. This is a third-rank immortal fruit, the dark blood fruit. There's only one left, so eat it. It has extremely powerful energy recovery properties. Enlin smiled warmly. Why? Lan Xiaoni's eyes were filled with incredulity as she stared at the crimson fruit in her hand. You're my underling, so how are you going to fight if you don't recover? Eat it. You're welcome, big boss doesn't lack money. Enlin spoke in a forthright manner. Lan Xiaoni's hands trembled as she picked up the dark blood fruit before slowly gnawing on it. Tears flowed down her face as she ate. This was the feeling of being treated with kindness after making a huge sacrifice. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face upon seeing Lan Xiaoni's expression. Wow. Underling recruitment plan was a great success. What if a similar situation like the blue light ball world appeared in the light ball world? That would leave him dumbfounded. Judging from this silly fish's impression of him, there should be some room for maneuver, right? That's right, maintaining a good relationship with underlings was a must for a big brother. Underling Lan's heart had clearly been won over by his dark blood fruit. And Lin brought out the blue tear fruit and activated his divine inspection technique. A tear of love, the final tear shed by High Priest Shihizi due to love. Divine rank material. And Lin, what the hell? Chapter 1048. His divine inspection technique seemed to have identified something extraordinary. A drop of sentimental tears? The blue liquid in his hand really was a tear? Tears could become divine rank materials? And Lin stared at the tear in his hand with incredulity on his face. Moments later, he looked up at the statue of Shihizi with curiosity on his face. He really wanted to know what kind of love story could make Shihizi shed such a valuable tear. It was a pity that Guyu had offered to tell him about Shihizi and Tianshinji, but he had refused. Lin, what are you thinking about? Lan Xiaoni asked upon seeing Lin's expression. Please add the word Big Boss after my name. Lin replied with a solemn expression. Alright, Big Boss Lin. Lan Xiaoni nodded readily. She had eaten the dark blood fruit, and her energy was quickly recovering. She was in a very good mood, so she didn't want to argue with Lin. Lin stroked the blue tear. I'm very curious about the story between Shihizi and Tianshinji. How much do you know? That. A reminiscent expression appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face. However, before she had a chance to say anything, the black and white balls of light floated toward the two of them. Fated ones, you can choose the light ball world to continue searching for the treasures we left behind, the statue of Shihizi interjected. Wait. Lin waved a hand before turning to Lan Xiaoni. Continue. Oh, we have to start with. Lan Xiaoni didn't even get a chance to finish her sentence before the statue of Shihizi interjected again. If you don't choose the light ball world, I'll put away all the light balls, and our trip to the tomb will be over. Lan Xiaoni. Lin turned his gaze toward the statue. Why did this statue seem to be in such a hurry? Could it be that it was feeling ashamed after seeing Lan Xiaoni recount its past? My God! Wasn't it something similar to a puppet NPC or something? Why does it have such emotions? Then I choose this one. Lin pointed at the white ball. Lan Xiaoni obediently pointed at the white ball. The world spun again. When their vision became clear again, the two of them were already in the clouds. In front of him was an endless stretch of white clouds. Stepping on them was soft like a sponge. All around him was a vast and deep blue sky. It was extremely clean and connected with the white clouds in the distance. This world seemed to only have these two colors. Amidst the simplicity, there was a sense of loneliness and distance. Thankfully, there's no one here to bother us. Hurry up and tell me about Shihizi and Tianshinji. Lin turned toward Lan Xiaoni with a gossipy expression. A blush appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face upon seeing the scorching light in Lin's eyes. I actually don't know much. I've only heard a few seniors mention them to me. In ancient times, an extremely terrifying fiend celestial appeared in the West Sea. He was known as the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. At the time, our spirit fish clan was forced into retreat by the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. Most of the West Sea has become the territory of the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. Finally, one day, the ancient heavenly fiend celestial tried to eradicate our spirit fish clan in one fell swoop. At the time, his army even reached the Sea Heart Palace. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial was simply too powerful. Even High Priest Shihizi and the clan leader were no match for him. Just as the Spirit Fish clan was on the brink of extinction, the Heavenly Turtle tribe, which had always been in seclusion, finally appeared. The two West Sea powers joined forces and finally defeated the ancient Heavenly Fiend Celestial's army. High Priest Tianqinji of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe was as dazzling as the sun during that battle, and she left a deep impression in the hearts of all the living beings of the Spirit Fish clan. High Priest Shihazi fell in love with Tianqinji at first sight. After that, he relentlessly pursued her, pursued her and failed. Lan Xiaoni seemed to be a little embarrassed at this point, and she turned her head to look up at the clouds with a melancholic expression, as if she didn't have the face to continue. And Lin was astonished. A handsome mermaid pursuing a female turtle? Was it that inspirational? Both the Spirit Fish clan and the Heavenly Turtle Tribe objected to this marriage. The Spirit Fish clan felt that it was absurd for such a handsome high priest to marry a turtle. The Heavenly Turtle Tribe also looked down on Shihazi. They said that the high priest didn't even have a portable turtle shell house, so where did he get the courage to pursue Tianqinji? However, Shihazi never gave up. For some reason, after Shihazi pursued her for several hundred years, Tianqinji accepted Shihazi's pursuit. She accepted this love that was beyond the comprehension of the secular world. Lan Xiaoni couldn't help but chuckle. To be honest, I've even imagined the scene of Shihazi and Tianqinji getting married. It would definitely be fun. Lin nodded in agreement. That would definitely be a very beautiful scene. However, the ancient heavenly fiend Celestial made a comeback, and the West Sea was once again embroiled in a devastating battle. In order to slay the ancient heavenly fiend Celestial, Senior Shihazi and Senior Tianqinji sacrificed the last of their lives to slay the ancient heavenly fiend Celestial, and they discovered an astonishing secret. This was a secret that could change the fate of both tribes. However, they felt that it wasn't time to tell their brethren about this secret, so the two of them were buried together at the bottom of the ocean and placed everything within the tomb, waiting for the fated one to open what they had left behind. The secret of this tomb was clearly a family matter between the Spirit Fish clan and the Heavenly Turtle Tribe. Never would I have thought that the Heavenly Turtle Tribe would entrust all of their hopes to a human like you. Lan Xiaoni turned to Lin with her blue eyes after she finished speaking, and there was a hint of pride and confidence that stemmed from her racial superiority. Lin smiled. I also never would I have thought that the Spirit Fish clan would entrust all of their hopes to you. Underling Lan, I'm not trying to pick on you. Truth be told, without me, this tomb would be over for you. Lan Xiaoni. His words punctured Lan Xiaoni's pride like a balloon. She instantly deflated with a loud thump. Let's go, Underling Lan. Let's see where the treasures of this world are. Lin was quite satisfied after listening to Lan Xiaoni's story. Even though he still didn't know the story behind the tears, he had at least gained a rough understanding of Shihazi. To be able to relentlessly pursue a female turtle for several hundred years, he had to be a badass. The two of them didn't walk this time. Instead, they flew. There were no obstructions, so flying was naturally the fastest. Lin unleashed his divine sense to survey their surroundings, but he didn't discover anything special. This was quite a headache. There were no special areas or abnormal energy, which meant that there were no clues. They could only be like headless flies, randomly choosing a direction and hurrying on their way. White clouds covered the sky, and the sky was clear as day. Thus, they flew for an hour, covering a distance of over 5,000 kilometers. In the end, there was still nothing. Not even a single life form was to be found, let alone some small monsters. Lin fell into a daze as he looked around at the empty heaven and earth. Chapter 1049. Boundless, when would it reach the end? What was most frustrating wasn't that there were many monsters along the way or that the environment was extremely harsh. Instead, it was that there was nothing they could do along the way. This. Big Boss Lin, I feel like this place is a little strange. Lan Xiaoni couldn't help but speak up as she trailed behind Lin. Lin rolled his eyes and snapped, Aren't you just spouting bullsh*t? But I just want to spout nonsense. This place is so empty and scary. Lan Xiaoni looked around with a nervous expression, fearful that a life-threatening danger would suddenly appear. Unlin, sometimes the more peaceful a place was, the more unsettling it was. She was afraid that it would explode at any moment. Let's continue onward. I refuse to believe that this place is infinitely large. Unlin spoke in a firm voice. Lan Xiaoni nodded and continued to follow behind Unlin. Whenever she was feeling uneasy, she would look at the white-robed figure in front of her. She would feel slightly more at ease just by looking at his reliable back. So what if her enemies were powerful? Big Boss Unlin could crush them with a single punch. The two of them continued onward through the boundless sea of clouds. 1 hour, 2 hours, 12 hours, one day there was still nothing. There was still nothing. Unlin silently halted his brick kinesis flight with a solemn expression. Impossible. How could a ball of light world be so big? Lan Xiaoni scratched her head. After all, every ball of light world has different characteristics. If we flew at full speed for the past few days, we could have circled the Earth several times. Even if we lined up all the dishes that the entire human race ate, it wouldn't be as long as our flight distance. This small world can't be this big. Unlin was still adamant about his theory. Lan Xiaoni stared at Unlin with a dumbstruck expression. What are you talking about? Unlin. All right, he had forgotten that this mermaid didn't know anything about Earth. Lan Xiaoni's eyes suddenly lit up. Do you think this place is the same as the place we first came from? Do we have to activate something in order to change that world? A thoughtful expression appeared on Unlin's face. Are you talking about the infinite sword formation? Lan Xiaoni was confused. What are you talking about? Unlin, that place is indeed very similar to this place with no end in sight. Relying on me to activate the burial sword chain of time, I absorbed all the death swords and left that world. Unlin muttered to himself for a moment, then continued. In truth, there are not as many death swords there as it seems. If we keep flying, we might just be crossing the same space. Lan Xiaoni was astonished. You're saying this is like a ghost going around in circles? Unlin pursed his lips. You can say that. He glanced at the white clouds in the vast sky and said, this place is very likely to be the same. The space we're flying through might be repeating itself. This time, both of them fell into silence. If that was the case, how could they change it? Previously, Unlin had the sword burial whispering chain, but this time, he had nothing. To put it bluntly, they still couldn't find a direction. Sigh. If I could see through all the matter and space in this world, I might be able to find a loophole. But that's impossible. Lan Xiaoni sat on the huge flying seashell with her hands supporting her cheeks as she murmured to herself. See through all the matter and space in this world? Unlin faltered slightly upon hearing this before his eyes gradually lit up. He who said it's impossible? A faint smile appeared on Unlin's face. Lan Xiaoni turned toward Unlin with shock in her eyes. No way, could it be that you can do something like that too? Countless stars suddenly flashed past Unlin's eyes, immediately following which his pupils became clear and reflected the entire world. Divine simulation technique. In an instant, a colorless ripple proliferated outward for several hundred kilometers. Regardless of whether it was the shape of the clouds, the flow of the air, or the flow of vital energy, all of the details were reflected in his mind. Climate, space, matter. He could see everything in a panoramic view. I got it. Unlin's eyes gradually regained clarity, but his face had become extremely pale. Big Boss Unlin, are you all right? Lan Xiaoni was given a fright by the sudden weakening of Unlin's aura, and she asked in a panicked voice. I'm fine. Unlin brought out a high-rank spirit pill from his storage ring before swallowing it. Using the divine simulation technique was extremely taxing on one's mind, and it could only be used once a month at most. Otherwise, it would cause severe damage to one's body and even deplete one's lifespan. Unlin only used it once, and he felt as if his body had been completely depleted. However, the result was good. I've found the loophole in this world. Unlin smiled. Are you really alright? Lan Xiaoni didn't really care about that. And Lin shook his head. I'm really fine. Come with me. He flew toward a certain direction atop his brick. Lan Xiaoni followed behind him with a concerned expression on her seashell. Not long after that, Lin stopped at a certain place. Lan Xiaoni looked around, but she didn't discover anything out of the ordinary. However, Lin silently pulled out his evil-slaying sword. Both of us were wrong. Why do we have to fly above the clouds? Lan Xiaoni wasn't stupid, and her expression instantly shifted as she turned toward the fluffy white clouds in the sky. That's right, the path is right below the clouds. It's right below the white clouds in this place. Lin slashed toward the white clouds down below. An inky black sword projection tore through the white clouds, creating a rift over 10,000 feet in length. There was a white spiral spatial passageway beneath the clouds. My God, how did you discover this spatial passageway without any spatial energy fluctuations? Lan Xiaoni stared at Lin with reverence on her face. You won't understand even if I tell you. Let's go. Lin couldn't be bothered to explain. Lan Xiaoni. If it weren't for the fact that she couldn't defeat Lin, she would definitely charge up and pummel him with her fists. Lin flew toward the spatial passageway with an extremely grave expression. The difficulty of this ball of light world had already far exceeded his imagination. If it weren't for his divine simulation technique, he didn't even know how long he would be trapped here. This was not a trial that a soul formation stage living being could pass. He felt like every time he entered a ball of light world, the difficulty of the next ball of light world would increase. This had nothing to do with the order in which he had chosen. It was as if the difficulty could be adjusted at will. After passing through the spatial passageway, Lin arrived in another world. This was also a vast expanse of clouds that stretched as far as the eye could see. However, there was a real yet illusory setting sun at the end of the clouds and the blue sky, dyeing the white clouds into the color of fire. This is, Lin faltered slightly as a sense of extreme danger suddenly welled up in his heart. Two heaven-piercing longswords suddenly appeared in the air not far away from him, and their earth-shattering sword intent seemed to be able to crush the heavens. A living being enshrouded in black mist with only a pair of crimson eyes visible stood in the air before speaking in an extremely hoarse voice. Do you prefer life or death? Chapter 1050. Two extremely fearsome flying swords tore through the air toward Lin and Lan Xiaoni. Oh? I didn't think you would be able to block my 99th attack. A cruel smile appeared on the ancient heavenly Fian Celestial's face. However, this must be your limit, right? I'm going to attack again. Who would have thought that you would be able to block one of my attacks? The ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial flew through the air with the black and white celestial swords still revolving around its body. What? My chest has been flattened by you. Lan Xiaoni was extremely aggrieved, and tears flowed from her eyes. It's all your fault. You have to compensate me. Lin was once again sent flying for several thousand meters by the two terrifying sword projections. Unless Xiao Shou rose up and became the main attacker. This was the ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial that the high priests of the two tribes had to sacrifice their lives to kill? Lan Xiaoni immediately hid behind Lin upon seeing this. After the ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial unleashed its 99th attack. At this moment the black mist figure spoke again. This is the last time. Do you prefer life or death? The sword projections dissipated, and the two of them were still completely unscathed behind the black brick. Speaking of which, is this the only attack you know, esteemed Fiend Celestial? The black mist figure nodded. Oh, so you prefer life. Then I'll kill both of you. Do it again, your sister. Thankfully, the ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial's attacks were very simple and inflexible, and the chaotic alloy brick was also very sturdy, so they were able to maintain an invincible position. Of course, it was also very unlikely that they would be able to win. If the ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial was already dead, then what was this thing before them? Of course it's life. Unlin replied without any hesitation. Boundless sword intent filled the entire space around them with a boundless aura of death. Two extremely terrifying spatial rifts appeared in the trajectory of the flying sword's attacks, from which bursts of turbulent energy that had yet to dissipate tore through everything in their surroundings. What followed next was the inhumane and boundless one more time. Unlin and Lan Xiaoni were still sent flying by the brick. Unlin and Lan Xiaoni were then sent flying for several thousand meters again. Big Boss Unlin, aren't you very powerful? Why don't you go out and beat it? Lan Xiaoni couldn't take it anymore and she sobbed. The two of them couldn't help but cry out. If women were made of water, then this mermaid was made of the sea. Her tears were so much that no matter how much she cried, she couldn't stop crying. Again? The two of them didn't dare to face the ancient heavenly fiend celestial head-on. The black brick hurtled the two of them back several kilometers before they finally managed to stabilize themselves. Suddenly, a hideous face appeared on the black mist figure. It had two horns on its head, and its face was red with fangs. It grinned and said, "This ancient heavenly demon god's favorite thing to do is to completely destroy the things you like." Ha 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 ha. His personality was too much of a demon king. Did he have to be so dedicated? What the hell, was this ancient heavenly fiend celestial sick? Do you prefer life or death? Even its might hadn't been reduced by much. It was still terrifying enough to make one's heart palpitate. However, this must be your limit, right? Let me do it again. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial pointed a finger, and the two celestial swords shot forth like dragons. The two celestial swords struck the chaotic alloy brick, and Unlin and Lan Xiaoni were knocked back several kilometers again. Unlin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Wasn't this a retarded question? Who didn't like to live? Come on, ravage me to your heart's content. Lan Xiaoni finally came to her senses, and she released her arms with a sheepish expression. She shook her head from side to side, as if Unlin had struck her pretty hard. Death remnant intent? Remnant intent power? I didn't think it would be able to withstand my fourth attack. Hee, I'm the big boss. Shouldn't I send my underlings to build up my might before fighting? Underling Lan, why are you crying and hugging me from behind? Unlin chuckled coldly. Boom. Two more earth-shattering sword strikes descended as he spoke. Thus, Unlin and Lan Xiaoni were knocked back several kilometers again. Unlin and Lan Xiaoni, ancient heavenly fiend celestial. Thus, the ancient heavenly fiend celestial unleashed another sword strike. A strange sound erupted, and the two celestial swords trembled lightly in the air as if they had deflated, but they didn't strike Unlin's black brick. Unlin was also startled upon seeing this, and he turned to look at the humanoid ball of black mist before him. Don't cry all the time, my clothes are all wet from your tears. Unlin snapped. Unlin, Lan Xiaoni. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial unleashed an enraged roar. Slash. I didn't think you would be able to withstand my third attack. A cruel smile suddenly appeared on the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's face. However, this must be your limit, right? I'm going to attack you again. Ah! Ah! Unlin was crushed by a hard black brick, and it was extremely uncomfortable. Lan Xiaoni continued to sob and ignore him. He suddenly felt as if there were two soft and fluffy objects pressing against his back as he spoke. His waist was also tightly encircled by a pair of slender arms. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial's sword strike was imbued with the sword intent and residual power it had attained. Its power was unfathomable, and it struck them with a sense of extreme danger. It was the exact same technique, but it was also the exact same lines. Lan Xiaoni even used a hand to tidy up her slightly disheveled hair as she calmly awaited the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's attack. F***CK. Oi, let go of me. I'm fine now, Unlin said with a resigned expression. PFFF, the flying sword transformed into two streaks of light, one black and one white, which sliced through the sea of clouds for close to 10 kilometers. A cruel smile suddenly appeared on the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's face. However, this must be your limit, right? I'm going to attack you again. Lan Xiaoni's voice faltered, and she didn't dare to say anything else. She was afraid that Enlin would use her as cannon fodder if he was displeased. Then, the ancient heavenly fiend celestial gave them another attack. Again? Enlin's eyelids twitched, and he positioned his brick in front of him again. Lan Xiaoni screamed at the sight of the figure in the black mist. It's the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. Why is it here? Enlin used all his strength to stabilize the black brick, but it was still sent hurtling toward Enlin like a cannonball. Enlin's expression darkened. Why should I compensate you? I don't have any breasts to compensate you. Countless question marks appeared in Enlin's mind. Lan Xiaoni hugged Enlin tightly, and she couldn't even be bothered to let go. She could attack Enlin again anyway, so she sobbed incessantly. Wah! This fiend celestial is so scary. What should we do? Lan Xiaoni screamed as her slender body was struck by Enlin's body. Lan Xiaoni was on the verge of tears. Even though it was very uncomfortable, she could only hold on to Enlin with all her might and run outside, where she would be sliced in half by Enlin's sword intent in an instant. Enlin, thankfully, there was something soft and warm on his back, which provided some cushioning. Otherwise, it would be even more painful. I also like to live. Lan Xiaoni also chimed in a panicked voice. Lan Xiaoni. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni both stared expressionlessly at the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. Then I'll fulfill your wish. All of you go to hell. Ha ha. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial burst into raucous laughter as it waved its hand through the air. I didn't think you would be able to block my second attack. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial flew through the air before a cruel smile appeared on its face. However, this must be your limit, right? Let me try again. I like to die. Lan Xiaoni raised her hands high into the air as she corrected. The flying sword instantly struck the black brick, upon which an extremely terrifying blade projection erupted forth. Enlin's expression also shifted drastically, and he immediately pulled out his chaotic alloy brick before hiding behind the black brick. Phew! That was close. Enlin murmured with fear lingering in his heart. Boom. Chapter 1051. The 100th attack didn't arrive as promised. The two black and white celestial swords beside the ancient heavenly fiend celestial stopped firing. Even a top-rate mighty figure would be exhausted after unleashing such a terrifying attack 100 times in a row, let alone this ancient heavenly fiend celestial, which was most likely just a manifestation of its residual power. A scorching light appeared in Enlin's eyes. After waiting for so long, this moment was finally here. Take this brick. Enlin tossed the brick to Lan Xiaoni before charging toward the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial straightened its back, and a powerful aura soared into the sky. Its voice was like thunder. Do you prefer life or death? Enlin faltered in fright at the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's aura. Then, a cold smile appeared on his face. If I like death, then come and cut me up. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial tore open a spatial passageway in front of Enlin. Ha ha! I love making my enemies' wishes impossible. Look, this is the spatial passageway leading to Master Shihaizi. I will grant you life. It was quite clear that it was letting them go. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni were astonished. How could it change its attitude so quickly? Enlin chuckled coldly. Then I like to live. A gratified smile appeared on the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's face. You are a very good opponent. I will grant you your wish and grant you life. You may leave now. After saying that, it even stretched out its hand and made a please gesture. Enlin, Lan Xiaoni, what a cowardly fiend celestial! How could Enlin just leave like this? Did he really think he had endured those attacks for nothing? He sneered. But I want to hack you to death right now. What do you think I should do? The ancient heavenly fiend celestial. We were just sparring. King gave me 99 sword strikes. Now, I'll let you have a taste of my sword techniques. Unlin didn't waste any more time. He roared, and the origin energy of the netherworld instantly erupted. His power skyrocketed, and the evil-slaying sword reverberated through the heavens as he slashed toward the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's face. In that instant, the entire sky and the sea of clouds instantly dimmed. There was only that pitch-black sword gleam with boundless power. The sword light tore through the void like a black crescent moon that could devour heaven and earth. In the nick of time, the ancient heavenly fiend celestial summoned 2 swords in front of it. Rumble! The incomparably mighty sword projection slashed down on the black and white swords, sending the ancient heavenly fiend celestial flying several thousand meters with an extremely domineering force. I didn't expect you to be able to block my full-powered attack. Unlin stepped through the air and looked at the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. A cruel smile suddenly appeared on his face. However, this must be your limit, right? Let me do it again. After saying that, Unlin slashed at the ancient heavenly fiend celestial again, without any hesitation. Lan Xiaoni couldn't help but cheer upon hearing those familiar words. Well done, Big Boss Unlin. Beat that bastard to death. Now that Unlin was bullying the ancient heavenly fiend celestial, it was as though he was taking revenge for her. The pleasure of finally being able to take revenge made her feel comfortable all over. The pitch-black sword radiance traversed the heavens and the earth, as if even the radiance of the setting sun would be engulfed. At this moment, it was as though Unlin was the true fiend celestial. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial screamed miserably under Unlin's attack. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial had tried to retaliate, but the black and white celestial swords would tremble slightly every time it tried to activate them, as though they were resisting with all their might. They probably wanted to vomit after hitting that brick, so they didn't want to do anything else now. Attack? No such thing exists. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial's attack method seemed to be relying on that flying sword. Otherwise, his attack on Unlin would not have been as simple as before. Now that the flying swords were on strike, it could only be a small fry. When Unlin unleashed his 18th sword strike, the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's defenses were broken through. A gash appeared on its chest and pitch-black blood gushed out. Ah! I want you to die. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial flew into a rage at the thought of being injured by a junior. It gripped its sword with both hands and slashed at Unlin. Puff, puff, 2 muffled explosions rang out. He didn't even unleash any moves. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial was slightly taken aback. At this moment, Unlin's sword light arrived once again and tore a huge gash in its body. Unlin had finally seen through it. The 2 swords were the main body, and the ancient heavenly fiend celestial was just here to act cute. His sword aura was like a rainbow as he pursued the ancient heavenly fiend celestial, aiming for its vitals with every strike. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial was extremely sullen. It didn't even have the strength to resist. You can't kill me. I'm the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. If you kill me, millions of demonic creatures will hunt you down. You will never have peace. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial threatened. Unlin chuckled. The Qing dynasty has already fallen. Ancient heavenly fiend celestial, what did you say? Whoosh! Caught off guard, a black shadow flashed past like a bolt of lightning, instantly tearing the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's body into 2. A white light flashed in Unlin's eyes, and streams of wind revolved around his sword as he looked at the shocked fiend celestial. You've already been dead for who knows how many tens of thousands of years. Dead people should be quiet, so cut the crap. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A series of peerlessly sharp sword projections appeared in the air like a white spider web, instantly slicing the ancient heavenly fiend celestial into thousands of pieces. Unlin didn't stop there. The 6 divine flames in his left hand and the holy vermilion flame in his right hand burned toward the ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial's body at the same time. The terrifying temperatures instantly melted the ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial's body into smoke. This time, even if the ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial knew a freakish ability like blood rebirth, it still wouldn't be able to survive. Enlin was a professional when it came to landing the killing blow. Big Boss Enlin is so awesome. Even the Demon King, who once ruled over the entire West Sea, is no match for you. Lan Xiaoni flew over with an expression of reverence and admiration on her face as she hugged her black brick. Hee, it's just a small matter. Don't make a big fuss. Enlin smiled lightly. He gripped the ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial's 2 swords tightly before refining them. Once the refinement was complete, something extremely astonishing happened. The 2 celestial swords transformed into a jade pendant. The jade pendant was smooth and round, and it was constructed from a fusion of black and white. One side was white while the other side was black. Enlin couldn't help but unleash his divine inspection technique out of curiosity. Heaven and Earth jade pendant, white as the sky, black as the earth. Extremely profound and exquisite. It can unleash a myriad of transformations and is integrated into the jade pendant. Divine rank material. Enlin was ecstatic. He didn't think that this would also be a divine rank material. He had initially thought that the 2 swords were weapons. Now that he thought about it, the ancient heavenly Fiend Celestial had most likely used the power of the Heaven and Earth jade pendant to transform it into the black and white celestial sword. However, a divine rank material was even better. This way, he would be 1 step closer to forging a divine rank weapon. Enlin stowed the Heaven and Earth jade pendant away with an elated expression. He was struck by a rush of dizziness. The 2 of them returned to a familiar place. Enlin raised his head and was instantly given a huge fright. He discovered that the statue of Shihaizi, which had been standing on the spot this entire time, was now sitting on the ground and looking at him with a smile on its face.